Great. Okay. Okay, we're now launched on YouTube, and with a few more minutes, we'll be jumping in. If everyone just bears with us, we'll let a few more people come in. Christian, just to you, I don't see the issue that we had in the Q&A fixed, but
yeah, no, neither do I. I don't know why.
it's kind of baffling, but I think we've got some plans. Okay, well, I want to jump in and start our meeting right on time. So I'm looking, you know, I want to call the meeting to order. A couple things. Certainly want to welcome everyone to our February full board and welcome all our guests as well as our community board members. I wanted just to touch base on a couple things. Wanted to do a little update on some functionality that we're going to do today that will affect how the public participates. I wanted to talk about our public session and just lay the ground rules for them, and then we'll jump in to our public safety session. As always, our agenda is to start out with a public safety session. We'll have our business session, then we'll have our community session. And then during each opportunity, each time we do something in the business session, we will allow the community to speak if it is regarding that specific topic. So one thing I wanted to announce to everyone, I sent an email to our board members, but I wanted to also speak to the public, and that is we recently had a concern raised by one of our board members that the chat functionality that we've been using may be violating the OML rules, which is the open meeting laws. And out of an abundance of caution and to address that concern, we have paused the chat functionality. And what we are going to do after speaking to the executive committee, we're going to set up a meeting with the Manhattan Borough President Office legal team, and that's who we take our guidance from. And we're also going to be just looking at chat functionality within Zoom and what's the basic functionality, but want to make sure that we are abiding by that. I think we take that very serious. And again, after this concern, this particular board member also got a comment from the committee that handles that, and they gave an opinion on it, which seems to support some parts of that concern, but maybe narrow in focus. So unfortunately, this happened yesterday where there wasn't enough time to sort of investigate it. So for today's meeting, I think everyone should understand, particularly the public, that the chat functionality is unfortunately not going to be used. So two things. When it's time for Q&A, what we are going to do is there is still a link on the home page. It's on the very first page to sign up. And there's two ways to participate in our meeting. One is to sign up, and you'll tell us what section. But what I'm also going to do today is use the raise hand functionality that I can see during those sections. We're always here to make sure that the public maximizes their time to speak. So we're gonna take two different ways. We'll call on you first if you fill out it. So if you got a little time, there's going to be a little bit of time before we get into the Q&A session for the public safety session. It's on the home page. It's also on the page for our menu, but we will be flexible in order to maximize participation of our community. So that's number one. Number two is there's a little bit of a change to our public session. Traditionally, it has been focused on getting reports from the various precincts and the fire department. And we are, I'm happy to announce that we have a special session in which District Attorney Bragg has agreed to come on and do a session, which I think is very timely, and we're very happy about that. Let me just talk about that. So we're gonna focus the majority of the session on that. If there are some reports for some of the members who traditionally at the end of that will give brief reports, although I know, unfortunately, I got from Captain Gallagher as well as Captain Zuber, unfortunately, they weren't able to show tonight because there is, again, very unfortunately, a wake for the police officer in Harlem that passed away. So there was a conflict from them showing up. So from a timing perspective, I think most of the time we'll be able to kind of focus on District Attorney Bragg and allowing him to speak. I think the goal was to have him have a kind of a brief statement, but we had a prep to this. And I think the goal was him and his team are looking for lots of feedback and Q&A. So I think that's going to be a lot of our focus, but we've got a generous piece of time. We'll allow District Attorney Bragg to make kind of a statement and speak, and then we'll kind of go to the Q&A. I did want to talk about the Q&A. We're going to prioritize the public. So we're going to have the public speak first and then have board members. I think that's the best way to do it. What I do want to do is just ask for a couple of things. Number one is, I know we always look for a civil tone, so we all can have different opinions. We all can be passionate about subjects, but we're here to be civil and here to have a dialogue. So I ask everyone to be respectful. The second part is, our goal is to maximize as many people to speak. And I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot of people who want to speak. So this is a Q&A session. It's not the traditional public session where maybe you have 2 or 3 minutes. What I'm asking you to do is to state your name and your question. And we're not looking for a 2-minute statement and then here's my question. I think really this is a Q&A. And if someone perhaps is giving a very long lead up to the question, I may say, can we get into the question? Because we want to maximize. We have a finite amount of time with our guests and we want to maximize. So if you take a long period of time, you're taking away from other people's opportunity for them to speak. So we want to have as many people. And I think that's it. So with that, I want to welcome and thank District Attorney Bragg for coming and allow him to sort of jump in. Again, he's going to make a statement and talk a bit, and then we're going to move to a Q&A session. So with that, welcome District Attorney Bragg.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to meet with so many of you who've been so active in our city, in our borough. And so I thank you for that. And glad you mentioned the wake. I'm just leaving St. Patrick's Cathedral a little while ago myself. Obviously a horrific event and one that really, is always on my mind, our public safety, but in particular, the 2 officers now, 1 detective and an officer. So let me just kind of start by, I guess, introducing the staff who's on. I think many of them, but just to see Estelle, who runs our community partnerships, is on. Jacques, who's in that unit and responsible for this area. Meg Reese, who's our first assistant, who I think liked the compliment you gave her earlier, and Richie Fife from our communications team. And let me introduce myself, because this may be the first time I'm meeting some of you. So I am a lifelong Manhattanite, a bit to the north of you in Central Harlem, where I grew up and where I live now. I'm a career prosecutor, both at the federal and state level. Have done the sort of full spectrum of prosecutions, from assault and armed robbery to financial fraud, landlord tenants, landlords who harass their tenants, wage theft, sort of done the whole spectrum, and looking to bring all that experience to bear in the Manhattan DA's office. I know, and this is why I'm really thankful for the opportunity. I know many of you have heard about or read about in the paper our memo that we released on day 1, and certainly take accountability for not having the proper scaffolding and context around that. So I wanted to provide that this evening. And so I think I can do that through some of the initiatives that are already underway in the office and things that we're already working on, including some things that happened today. So really, number 1 on our agenda is guns. This is an issue that I've know very well, both growing up, having had guns pointed at me, and very recently, late last year, having had a significant shootout on my block. So we last week announced I appointed an executive DA for gun violence prevention, sort of a first of its kind in the Manhattan DA's office position. The person's name is Peter Pope. He's a longstanding career prosecutor, an alum of the Manhattan DA's office, and one time monitor of a significant court action brought against a gun shop during the Bloomberg era that was alleged to be flooding our area with illegal guns from out of state. He oversaw that as a monitor. And we are really hard at work. A kind of unfortunate statistic in that these cases are out there to be made, but I think shows you how active our office has been. In the first month of the year, we've done 40 gun possession cases, which as I know, sadly, kind of far outstrips where we were last year at the point, but it's something that we are actively working on every single day. And one thing that our gun coordinator is going to be doing is talking to every single person in the office who has a gun possession case and trying to take that gun possession case and build it into a gun trafficking case. We're talking to our local and federal partners about gun tracing technology, which is something that I worked on at the Attorney General's office and know very well. Really trying to go from cases involving one gun to figuring out where they come from, who else is buying them, and turning them to cases involving dozens of guns. Just today, we announced a sentence of someone who was possessing ghost guns, which are guns that can't be traced. They don't have serial numbers. They're a significant growing threat, not as prevalent in Manhattan as they are in other places, but a big part of our gun strategy is to make sure they don't grow. And so today's case was significant to hold accountable and significant prison time to someone who was possessing ghost guns. And also, as we see more and more, someone who there was indicia of sort of him being radicalized, had indicia of him, being someone who was hating the police and hating government. So important to remove guns, period, but particularly out of hands like those. So that's our top agenda item is guns. Our second is really dealing with the disorder we see really on I would say the more micro level in our small businesses in particular, whether it's our retail stores and pharmacies or our restaurants. I met with a group of retail providers earlier today. Last week, we announced a small business alliance, and it's going to partner with a number of small businesses from across the borough to focus on commercial robbery and on shoplifting. As many of you know, we've had a number of our institutions kind of have these smash and go robberies where people are coming in and taking property, in bulk and in groups. Those are the kind of cases I've done throughout my career. Those are hierarchies. Those are organizations and enterprises. And so we're building relationships and going to use our tools to disrupt those systems. Then we also have the cases where we've got people in smaller numbers, one by one, taking goods. And we want to focus on that and divide that into two categories. Those who are, shoplifting out of, whether it's substance use or need, and to connect them with services. And then those who are the opportunists, who are the repeat offenders, who are really making it hard on our small businesses. And so the Small Business Alliance is going to look at all that. And I know we're going to get to Q&A, so I'll just do one more top priority, which is domestic violence and sexual assaults. Many of you we've talked through over the last couple of years, we've talked about reimagining that work. We have a lot of expertise in the office focusing on it. We brought in the head of our trial division, who's that's really kind of the largest division in the office responsible for all street crime, is Joyce Smith, and she's a career domestic violence prosecutor, 3 stints as a prosecutor in the Queens DA's office. Most recently was the acting district attorney in Nassau County and used to run the Bronx Family Justice Center. So we brought in significant expertise to pair with the great career prosecutors we have to focus on these areas. So lots more to talk about, hate crimes, opioids, but in the spirit of the opening and really getting to the Q&A so I can address your comments, I'll leave it with guns and our small businesses and domestic violence, and we'll await your questions. Thank you for letting me be here with you tonight.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna, as I said, I know that some people come in a little bit late, so just reiterating that we are going to take the community questions first. We're then going to take our community board questions. Just again, reiterating that we ask you to identify yourself and ask your question, and really focus on that part of it. So Christian, do you want to start out? My understanding is a few people signed up. Again, I'm going to announce this again. There are three different ways to communicate today in the meeting and now. You could sign up on our homepage. You can raise your hand now, your digital hand. I see some hands up. You can also put questions in the Q&A. We could try and answer them as well. But Christian, do you want to call the first person?
I guess Megan Murphy.
Megan, how are you tonight?
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Bragg. I really appreciate you coming on tonight. I think it's important to have a dialogue with the community. I've had the opportunity to watch you on a few forums these past few weeks. And one particular interview you had with Errol Lewis actually described people who are critical of your memo and policies as your political opponents. So I wanted to introduce myself to you because I'm an Upper West Sider. I'm a parent. I'm a physician. We live obviously in Manhattan. And so I'm not your political opponent. I'm your constituent. And I think that that's important to recognize that there are millions of people in Manhattan who will disagree with your policies. And that doesn't make us political opponents. That just makes us people who want to have a conversation and dialogue. And so I guess to get to part of my question, every day I walk the streets. I cannot walk into a drugstore or any sort of small business, like you mentioned, without watching a daily robbery, a store closing. This past week, I actually was verbally accosted to the point that I physically ran across the street because I was afraid of the person who was screaming atrocities at me. This has just become commonplace around here. It is what you would, I guess, have called low-level offenses, but I don't think.
And Megan, can you ask?
I'll be fast. I'm sorry. I'll be quick.
Can you please get into the
But
question?
we don't consider them low-level. So, Will, what is your tolerance, I guess, of these crimes, and at what homicide level will you start to shift your policies? And will you commit to quarterly reports of what your office is prosecuting, and have transparency of your office, so that way, as the public, we can sort of have a dialogue on what exactly is happening?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Megan.
so I thank you for the question, and I don't remember using that phrase. If I did, I apologize, because I don't view this as a political season. I think we're all focused on public safety, and there may be multiple avenues there. So I take your concern as that language and share your concern there. Look, we are laser focused. As I said, guns are my number one priority. I don't apologize for that, because I think that's the most significant thing facing the island as a whole. But that's not to the exclusion of and that's why I mentioned our Small Business Alliance. We're focused on the commercial robberies. We are focused on people who are taking goods from our stores, really focusing on them in two separate categories, as I mentioned. Those who can be directly connected with services in the moment, if that's what's driving them, but really also recognizing that we've got opportunists among us who are just taking goods. I mean, one thing that we're going to be doing is, for people who are doing this serially, so they're maybe taking things that are below and they fit into pettit larceny, aggregating those charges, as being a part of a scheme, so then they could be charged as a felony. So we're focused on that. I think that's consistent with connecting those with services who need them. I think we can do both. I think we can do guns and do shoplifting. I think we can do shoplifting and look at it for those who need services and be responsive, but also be mindful that there are people out there who are, opportunistically taking advantage, and hold them accountable through the traditional way, like I've done for the past 20 plus years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Christian, I want to note something, that it looks like the Q&A is working now, so you might be able to answer some of these questions with the link to sign up. But
can I just add one thing? Sorry, but our data just is posted on our website.
Oh, thanks, Megan. I meant to mention that. We've got a dashboard, a really, really good one.
Yep. So you can see exactly what's happening.
Thank you. And that's just to clarify, I think the question was, there's going to be some quarterly reporting. It seems like there's real-time reporting, and it'll be available on a daily basis on the website, to clarify that. Christian, the next person who signed up.
There isn't anybody signed up for this section.
Okay, then I'm going to go to raised hands, and I will call on Elizabeth Kellner first, and I'm going to allow you to speak. Elizabeth? Elizabeth, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I live in Manhattan Valley, and I've lived here for 45 years. So I have seen the ups and downs of crimes in this city. Lots of murders, burglaries, criminal activity in my neighborhood. And I am thrilled with what has been happening over the past 20 years that made me and my children feel safe here. Full disclosure, I have been a big supporter of Mr. Bragg, who I met a couple of years ago. I want to see his approach to criminal justice succeed. What I am concerned about is the gun violence in my immediate neighborhood, Manhattan Valley, most of which seems to emanate from connections to the NYCHA Project Douglas houses. And what can I do as a longtime resident and privileged white resident, and I'll say it right here, to support you and to support that effort? Because I feel you are being wrongly blamed for a whole lot of things that are affecting our city. You've been in office 3 weeks. I want to see you succeed. I want to see your approach to criminal justice succeed. And what can we as Upper West Siders do to support that effort?
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I appreciate the question, and thanks for your support. I think that, one, and I've been trying to do a lot of meetings like this to kind of set the record straight in terms of what my beliefs are. Doesn't mean we won't have, obviously good faith policy discussions along the way, but I think helping to sort of correct the record, if you will, and get out what I actually believe and what the focus is, which I've kind of started my intro, would be particularly helpful. Specifically with your neighborhood, we're happy to sort of connect offline. I know you are a significant leader in the area, and there may be people who we can connect with in Frederick Douglass and in the neighborhood who are closer to and may have information that may help us. We're also partnering with community groups who are helping us, kind of community violence interrupters, who may also be able to go in. The number one thing is to stop a case before it happens. So what you're hearing and seeing and connecting us, and I think hopefully someone can maybe put some contact information in the chat, and you can reach out, or otherwise you've got my information, you can reach out to me as well. But connecting us with those on the ground, and so we can connect and get in the folks who can stop the violence before it starts. That's the number one thing that would be helpful.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call on the next person. I'm going to request strongly if we can get into the questions. We've got a lot of people. We're already half hour into this. I'm going to be a little more aggressive in asking people to ask their questions and kind of let's respect that there's many people who have time that they want to speak as well. So I'm going to ask Gail Edwin. Gail, I'm making you available to speak, and if you could ask your question, that would be wonderful.
Yes, I will be brief. My concerns are many, but in particular, my question is directed to the need for mental health services, because so much of what we see on the streets of our neighborhoods is a result of the failure of support systems. So what, if anything, is your office going to do in connection with that issue? That was short, right?
Thank you. And I think mental health is probably the number one issue, in that it pops up, it intersects in so many parts of our system. So I was in City Hall yesterday with the mayor and the other 4 New York City DAs. And one thing that the mayor's consistently talked about is what he calls kind of upstream services to stop things before they happen. And so we're having ongoing conversations about how to create that infrastructure and improve upon it. My office has, as some of you know, forfeiture funds, not what they once were, but we're looking at ways to invest those to address it. I mean, I think the number one issue, and it's just costly and it will take a lot of people working together, is housing with wraparound services to address it. That's the number one. I mean, I think we all know it works. The research shows it will make us safer, but it also costs a lot of money, will take time and coordination. So we're talking to our partners in law enforcement about that. In the meantime, trying to put in some more temporary supports, where I talked about sort of I guess I touched upon it a little bit when I talked about shoplifting, is an approach of kind of flooding the zone that we're talking about with partners, where we kind of can, put services right in areas that we know are sort of very hot, so to speak, to connect them. And one thing that we're doing with services is when there is an active case, right? So that's when we become involved, an active case that has a mental health need, to get the service much more, much sooner in the process. That will, it shows, make it, will improve the efficacy and the outcome. And so that's something we're looking to do to streamline. So those are a couple of things, but it's going to take, a lot of partnership across city government, and we're collaborating. We committed yesterday to sort of having regular meetings, which weren't happening before, this administration.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question that's there's two people asked for, but relatively the same question in the Q&A, Natalie Hilson and a Marlena Eatman. And in essence, I'm paraphrasing, but the question is, what is the position going to be on violent crimes, threats that don't involve a gun, whether it's a knife or simply a verbal threat? I think there's been a little, well, I'm not gonna say misunderstanding, but I think there's a concern around that, and perhaps an opportunity to clarify the position on that.
Yeah, so look, threats of uses and displays of weapons are going to be treated seriously as felonies. Like I said, I've done that work before. I've done those kind of prosecutions. Verbal threats, depending upon the nature of them, could be a menacing charge, could be a stalking charge, would depend upon the circumstances. But a threat with a weapon is a serious matter. We're going to treat it as such, and have been.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for everyone. I do think that's a concern, clearly for guns, but I think there was some questions about perhaps a step under that. Okay, we have a few more community members, and then hopefully we can get to board members. I'm going to have a Michael Schwab. Michael, I'm going to make you able to speak, and I'm going to ask you to kind of get right into your question, as we have a lot of people who want to ask questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I can see that you can hear me. So my question was, there's been a large spike in terms of traffic violence across the city in the last 2 years. So I was wondering what role your office can play in trying to prevent that and stem that.
Thank you.
We have a
vehicular
unit, Michael. So thank you for flagging it. Someone who's got great depth and expertise, but we need more resources, particularly as you correctly point out. We see more, and I think also with more of us coming back, hopefully, and the city getting back, sadly, we may see more of those incidents. So, we are working in collaboration with the NYPD. We have a unit that's focused on them. It's something that I'm aware of, and I think that generally law enforcement is more aware of that than in past years, and seeing that as something there's an opportunity for intervention. When I think about kind of the various cases, we're thinking about sort of the level of sort of trauma or harm associated, and some of the vehicular incidents arising from reckless driving and things like that certainly fall into a category of creating great harm.
Thank you, District Attorney Bragg. We're going to have a Steve Filler. Steve, if you can answer your question, that would be wonderful.
Yes, can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Great, beautiful, and I'm not getting any feedback, so I appreciate that. I actually really wanted to plant a seed here, especially for DA Bragg.
I'm actually having difficulty hearing him.
You can speak up a little bit, and again, we're looking for questions, so again,
yeah,
looking forward to hearing your question.
But this is some insight here that actually, for some reason, I don't seem to be having access to my audio settings.
Perhaps you can move closer to the microphone.
Is the volume better now? Can you hear me okay now?
I think so. District Attorney, can you hear him better now? Yeah, I can hear you better as well, Steve.
Great, thank you guys. One of the real problems that we've had, and it's not to encourage anybody to sacrifice the liberal attitude we've had here in New York. I think everybody enjoys that and appreciates that, and that's great. But at some point, we need to find balance here. And one of the real problems we've had are with these shelters in the city, where they're rewarding people who've committed crimes with a place in Manhattan, oftentimes paying exorbitant amounts for it, $1,600 a month, something like
Steve,
that.
I'm gonna stick to, could you ask your question? There's literally 13 people behind you. So your question is, what would you like to ask the district attorney?
Well, it's maybe what I should do is contact him personally, and we have a private conversation at some other time.
That would be wonderful.
The insight I have to share here is like gold.
Okay,
will
great. We're
positively
gonna
benefit the city's
again, if you have a
budget.
question, we'd love
It'll
you have
get
a
rid of a
question.
lot of the crime that you're talking about. And this is the
Okay, thank you, Steve. We're gonna move on to another question, and he can free to reach out to you guys on your website and have this dialogue that he wants directly. We're gonna move on to a Lynn Ledway. Lynn, I'm gonna make you available to speak.
Go ahead.
Hello, this is Lynn's husband. District Attorney Bragg, is bail reform working for you? Should it change? Should it go back to the way it was? We're going to keep it. What are you going to do?
So, I mean, look, I think those are sort of profound questions of the day, over which I obviously don't have a direct say in Albany. My, general sense is that I don't think we know. We look at the national trends and, many of the things that reform is blamed for in New York City are happening nationwide in jurisdictions that didn't do any change. So I'm in a camp that I want to see the data. I saw some state data that was disturbing about the pretrial services earlier this year, which suggested that bail reform was not working as intended, and then that data was changed a couple of days later. They said the first iteration was a mistake. So I'm closely following the data and will be guided by it.
Great. I wasn't someone home at the moment you stopped, so I got a little taken off. So great. Let's continue on. We're getting closer through the community members. So let's have a Marva Wade speak. Marva, I'm going to allow you to speak. Your question is, Marva.
Thank you so much, DA Bragg. I wish you the very best in your new job. What I'm wanting to know is policing. I live on the Upper West Side and I have for over 50 years. And a lot of what I see where I live has to do with people that are unhoused and have mental issues. Are you looking to somehow have mental health workers out with the police to kind of deal with those issues? The history of sending the police when someone has a mental issue is not really working anywhere. The outcomes have been terrible. So what do you see your job in working with the police to address what I see is a huge issue where I live on the Upper West Side? I see many ill, people that have mental illness. Being a nurse, I kind of cue in on that. What is your idea on reimagining the police department?
Thank you, Marva.
So I appreciate the question. I don't have the same medical background you do, but see some of the same issues. My dad ran homeless shelters growing up, so I've been in and around these issues, and I think they're more acute now than really at any point I've seen during my life. There was a pilot program in Harlem and East Harlem with sort of police responses last year. I don't want to speak for the mayor, obviously, but I think part of his plan, I've heard him talk about it, is having beefed up mental health response along with police officers. And I certainly support mental health responses where it's safe to do so, and we have some good models around the country of where that is working. So I support the concept. Obviously, the police department is a mayoral agency, but in part of that conversation with the mayor. But we'll defer to him. But I think he's addressed that and said that he's exploring that idea.
Thank you. So we have 3 more digital hands from community members, and then I'm going to go to board members. So that's the plan. There's a Thomas Caffrey, there's Melinda Thaler, and then we'll have Peter Arnst, and then we're going to go into our board members. So Thomas, let's allow you to speak. Thomas.
Mr. Bragg, you mentioned briefly that you've had a meeting, that there hasn't been these kinds of meetings before among the departments regarding upstream issues that result in crime. I'm just wondering what your impression has been with the new administration. I know it's only been a month, but does it seem collaborative? What level of collaboration do you see among the different departments? Homelessness, mental health, whoever's involved in these things, education.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you for the question. So the meeting I was referring to was one between the 5 New York City DAs and the mayor, along with the police commissioner and the deputy mayor for public safety. Obviously, I'm new, but what I was told was that was the first meeting of that sort in about a year, where the 5 DAs were together with the mayor and the kind of public safety leadership. Other agencies weren't present, but we certainly did talk about kind of how to connect with other agencies to address kind of public safety in a broad way. So, you know, we're what, 31 days in, I guess we have a full month in. I think there's a strong spirit of collaboration. You know, I've met with I met with the deputy mayor before yesterday. I met with the police commissioner before. I've been in touch with the mayor. And so I think we're, you know, so to speak, rowing all in the same direction. And we also committed to, you know, continuing to meet regularly and kind of exchange contact information to sort of put the right people in our offices. And you named a number of agencies, and I think they're part of the broader response to public safety. And I think there was general consensus that we needed to be sort of working across all those agencies. So I'm feeling that we've got a strong spirit of collaboration going forward, and we're all rowing in the same direction.
Thank you. So District Attorney Bragg, I wanted to just sort of get your time limit. I know we're about a half hour. We sort of said that we've got lots of more hands. I want to just check in with you, and I want to be respectful of time. And I see Jacques smiling because I think we planned the best we could, and then you deal with it. So can you give me a sense if you have a little bit more time, or how you want me to manage the rest of the call?
So for the rest of your agenda, I'm happy. I mean, like many of you, my other obligations for the evening depend upon others in my household. So I've got some child issues to turn to at some point. But no one's banging on my door at the moment. I think the existence of a history project is buying me some time, to the chagrin of my daughter. So I you know, what, another 15 minutes or so, or 20? I mean, you let me, how much longer is in the meeting?
I think it's more than 15, but we'll take whatever we can get based on my instincts. You've got a lot of board members. We've had a hand more community members. You know, I think it's 30 minutes maybe, but you know, we'll do the best we can to squeeze it in as much as we can. I just want to be respectful of your time. And I know we originally said about 30 minutes. So why don't I go through sums? And if you want to say I can take a few more, Steve, that, you know, you tell me when you're sort of hitting a little bit of the limit. And maybe you say I can take 1 or 2 more, and that'll signal when we have to wrap it up. But
we'll do it. And then what I can certainly commit to doing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying thank you for your time, you know, your generosity of time.
Yeah, so let's keep plugging away. And then you know, anyone we don't get to, we can certainly, if they're in the Q&A, or if you want to have them email Estelle, you know, we'll connect with folks even if we aren't able to connect tonight. But let's keep pressing on.
Great. And I do want to tell board members that the DA and Jacques, who's been great for us, has offered to come to other meetings and have really been a participant. So unfortunately, if you don't get an opportunity to ask a question, I'm based on those conversations that we have, it seems like there'll be other opportunities in the future. I think we're going to continue to just go as quickly as we can. Melinda, I'm going to make Melinda Taylor, we're going to have you speak. And Melinda, I am going to ask you to get right into the question because we have a lot of people who want to ask questions.
Okay. We're seeing a significant number of offenders that have a large number of priors, often for the same or similar offenses. Where repeat offenses are racked up again and again, there comes a point where rinse and repeat is not working. When this happens, after arrest and connection to services and keeps repeating, what approach other than rearrest and re-release takes into account the safety of the public against these repeat offenders?
Thank you, Melinda.
Yeah, no, look, that's an excellent question, and I think that's what we're seeing, particularly sort of in the shoplifting, commercial robbery context. And so the answer is a bit dependent on the circumstances, right? I take from the premise of your question is that it's one where the services have been tried and haven't worked. So folks who've sort of flouted and haven't followed through, you know, we'll handle one way. With sobriety, you know, obviously sometimes it takes a couple of times. But you know, we have to escalate when people repeat. One of the issues is that for some of these offenses, you know, if it's petty larceny, if it's taking $50 for goods, you know, even the highest penalty is going to be, as you say, a sort of a rinse and repeat, which is why, you know, trying in those instances to really emphasize the services, if in fact that is what's driving the issue in the first place. For more significant in terms of dollar amount, we then have more significant penalties. Or if it's coordinated conduct, for example, doing a commercial robbery with more than one assailant that's a felony in and of itself. So we have tools at our disposal, and we'll be using them based upon the kind of aggravating and mitigating circumstances presented in each case. But we are focused, and I think particularly, and I hope you get the spirit of this tonight. We're focused on this issue. We're committed to the dialogue, learning from the experiences on the ground, and I think we're going to have really good practices, both enforcement and policy, coming out of our Small Business Alliance, because this is the people most affected. It's the small business owners, a deputy commissioner from the NYPD, and others gathering around, probably virtually, to bring all their experience to bear on this very issue.
Thank you. Robert is it Ellenbogen? Hope I'm saying that right. If you want to ask your question.
Hi, what is your approach to bike safety? We see e-bikes running red lights, mopeds on the sidewalks, no regard for red lights, crosswalks. Why aren't bikes upheld to the same safety laws?
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks for the question, Robert. I will say that's not an issue I've reached in the first 31 days. Happy to connect with you. I know it's an issue of safety, kind of right with the collision question we had earlier. So it's not one that I would just kind of be in forthright here. With the guns and domestic violence and some of the other issues, it's not one that I've spent a lot of time focusing on in the first 30 days. But happy to connect with you and others. It's something I know is an issue, and that we need to kind of turn our attention to.
Thank you. And the last digital hand, then I'll move into the attendance. Maria D'Angelo. And Maria, if you can get right to your question, we appreciate it.
Yes. Hi. Good evening. Question about disposition section of your January 3rd memo. You talk about the carceral sentences and following rules apply absent exceptional circumstances. For a determinate sentence, the office will request a maximum of 2 years. I don't need to read it. You wrote it. You know what I'm speaking about. I'm just wondering, can you talk a little bit about what you view as exceptional circumstances that would result in the office asking for a longer sentence than 20 years in pretty much all felonies that are included in your mandate?
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I had an opportunity to write a letter to the editor in the Daily News last week. We're addressing this, and I talked, I believe, I don't know how much detail we went into, but a case I'd handled as a federal prosecutor for someone who was laundering millions of dollars for an international cartel that was doing lots of violence, and I view that as extraordinary. It was in response to some other kind of extraordinary anti-Semitic violence. It's case by case. I'm happy to sort of or maybe someone else can put a link in the chat to that letter, the op-ed, which could probably answer the question better than I can, on the fly. But it set forth some kind of parameters, if you will. But extraordinary circumstances happen, right? I mean, and this is why we drafted it that way, realizing that we have to sort of capture the full range of bad things that people do.
Thank you. So the last community member, and then we're going to go to board members, is Peter Arnst. So Peter,
I'm actually sorry. I guess maybe, and I heard you talk about the chat earlier. I've said a couple of times I've asked to put this. I guess there is no chat log. Is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had to pause the chat for some concerns about the way it's being used for the OML by a board member. So there is not a live chat. We'd be happy. We have Max, our assistant, to help us kind of with our with anything you want. So if you want to follow up with anything, Jacques, we've got an open conversation. If you want to follow up, we can either send it out or put it on the website. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the chat up today because of that issue.
Got it. So we'll send the letter to the editor to you. I can't remember. I said something else for the chat, but for the life of me, I can't remember what what that was now.
I'm sure someone will reach out to me, and my lack of thing, Max is our assistant district manager. I couldn't get it out. So, okay.
I did just want to add that I included my contact information to one of the questions. So under answered, if anyone wants to reach out to our office, you can reach out to me directly, and I'll make all the necessary connections.
That's great. So people look under Q&A, and you look under answered ones. Jacques has his name under under Steve Filler's question at 7:08 p.m. You can see his email, and he can follow up. Okay, let's. A big history paper is behind, right around the corner. So let's sort of jump in. So Peter, you'll be the last community member, and then we're going to go to board members.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, District Attorney Bragg, for coming out. I'm Peter Arnson with the Columbus Amsterdam bid. We're north of 96th Street. A number of people have raised issues that we are very concerned about, the gun violence and people on the street with mental health issues. The 24th precinct has done a tremendous job of getting guns off the street and with dealing with people with mental health issues. We also have Goddard Riverside up in our neighborhood, which does an outreach to people with mental health issues. I would recommend that you work with the community board, which has a number of committees, and schedule meetings with some of these people. I know that the 24th precinct in particular has done a good job with the guns, but there are a number of officers that are frustrated with people being released, and that's something that needs to be addressed. So this neighborhood would be a great place to try out and to work out some of the issues that the city is facing. And I welcome your coming up here and meeting with these organizations. And thank you for hearing me out. Thanks, Stephen.
I appreciate the invitation, and I think I'm only about 10 blocks from you, so it won't take me long to get there, and look forward to collaborating.
Thank you. So we're going to go through some board members now. I'm going to ask that the board members be respectful that we've got a lot of board members and time is limited. So again, if you can get right into your questions, it'd be great. I'm going to call on Natasha first, if you have a question. And again, let's get right into our questions so we can maximize participation from our community board members.
Hi, thank you for being here tonight. I just wanted to say that the quality of life has really gone down a lot in the last 3 years. And it is visible and frankly driving families with young children out of the city in droves, including nearly my own. And I want to address, the increasing level of lawlessness or even implied lawlessness on the streets, whether it's people who may or may not be homeless, may or may not be mentally ill, what they're doing in subway stops, inside subway trains, and on our streets and sidewalks. There seems to be no real coordination between agencies, whether it's the Department of Homeless Services. I never see anybody around from them. There's no way to reach out to them or to file an immediate.
Natasha, I'm going to kind of encourage you, like for everyone else, if we can get into a question.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know about the potential for, if you could talk a little bit more about the potential for coordination between the different agencies, the DHS, the NYPD, the Department of Sanitation, and your own department. Could you be more specific about that?
Thank you.
Yeah, so look, I can say it's a priority. I mean, those are, all mayoral agencies. And as I mentioned, we met with the mayor just yesterday, and his deputy mayor for public safety and the police commissioner. We talked about, this level of coordination. So it is something that is on the front burner, so to speak. And I think we are, ready, willing, and able to collaborate with the mayor, particularly with those agencies to address those issues. And I know he is as well. He said as much. And so now we got to get to work, and that's the plan.
Thank you. Polly?
Good evening, District Attorney Bragg, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. We just recently formed a public safety task force here on Community Board 7, and the 4 issues that you mentioned and everyone else mentioned is guns and gangs, violent crimes, street and subway safety, and then also the mentally ill homeless. So we're looking forward to working with your office to find out whatever resources you can provide us to guide us on how to address these issues. I know you mentioned two programs, I believe, with Peter Pope that you've launched dealing with guns. What about the street and subway safety and also the mentally ill homeless? Does your office offer any resources right now that could guide us on how to come up with an action plan to address these issues?
Thank you, Polly.
I'm glad you mentioned trains because I should have mentioned it up front. You know, I was just looking at the statistics earlier today on transit violence, and it is something that we're thinking about, you know, staffing and having people kind of staff, particularly at transit, not at physical, but responsible for certain transit hub areas. It's essential to us coming back as a city. It's the lifeblood of not just Manhattan, but the city and our commerce. So that's something I hadn't mentioned that we are focused on. And you know, my office is, you know, handling well, more than one, but most significant, you know, most prominently the Michelle Go you know, transit pushing case. So this is top of mind every day in our office.
Thank you. Jay.
Yeah, I looked at your letter and your policy statement, and I think I divided it in my mind into two parts. One was existing crimes that you announced your office would not prosecute at all, and the other was crimes in which you would reduce the severity of the charges. Earlier in this conversation, in response to a question about how you felt about the changes in the bail laws that were enacted, your response in essence was that those are questions for the legislature in terms of how they treat the bail laws, whether they needed amendment, et cetera. So, and I note that several years ago, one of your counterparts, District Attorney Johnson in the Bronx, in a similar vein to your announcements, announced shortly after he was elected that based on his own personal beliefs, he was never going to seek the death penalty. Later on in a death penalty case, the governor at the time, who was Governor Pataki, actually replaced him with the Attorney General because of his refusal to follow the law as it existed at that time. And that replacement of the district attorney was upheld by the Court of Appeals, which affirmed that it is the legislature which makes the laws, and it's the job of the district attorney to enforce them. Now, as an aside,
we got a lot of people.
I know, I'll finish in a minute.
Thank you.
I'm an attorney, and I recognize that any district attorney has a broad range of discretion in when he charges and when he doesn't. But my point is, in putting forth a list of crimes that you are not going to prosecute at all, and in unilaterally reducing those penalties, how you reconcile your role with the role of the elected legislature, which has the responsibility of making those laws.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, thank you. And look, I'm well familiar with Johnson versus Pataki, having litigated under it when I was at the Attorney General's office. You know, myself, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about prosecutors having, you know, long made these discretionary decisions. So, you know, as I said in an address to the office last week and publicly, you know, we're using our discretion in all of these matters, but this is a statement of principles. And, you know, particularly, you know, having sat here tonight, you know, when we're talking about gun violence, we're talking about extreme commercial robbery, talking about domestic violence, you know, I'm just looking at my list, marijuana misdemeanors, you know, which, you know, frankly, has been changed by the legislature in large part. It's a matter of kind of prosecutorial discretion and resources, you know, and so first on the list is guns. We realize that, you know, while in terms of, you know, severity of charge, the shoplifting and commercial robbery may not be what the legislature gave the most prominence to, but we realize and we're listening to folks that that's important too. Domestic violence is important. so it is a matter of judgment, but one I believe is accorded to me, you know, under the law, and one that prosecutors have been doing, including, you know, DA Morgenthau, DA Johnson, and all. We're all making resource and priority decisions because we're not all charging every fact pattern, you know, that's presented to us under the penal law. And I sit here and listen, and I think the things that we've articulated as priorities, the guns, the commercial robberies, the shoplifting, thinking about mental health is what I'm hearing. And so, look, certainly willing to sort of react and have a discussion, but I think that the things that we're not emphasizing to give us the bandwidth to do the more significant things that are on people's minds, to me, seems very consistent with the conversation we're having tonight.
Thank you. Courtney, again, if we could get into the questions, I think we can get get everyone in. So your
I'll be quick.
Would be greatly appreciated.
I'll be quick. First, just do want to say thank you again for being here tonight. I think in many of the cases that we're seeing in our neighborhoods and also outside of it, so many of those involved seem to have many priors. So I'd like to know what you're going to do to ensure that the message coming out of your office is that recidivism and escalating crimes will just not be tolerated. And if the message is intercepting via services, like you mentioned earlier, I'd like to know what services specifically do you think will be sufficient to stem the tide? So if this is flood the zone, what services do you think we need that we don't already have?
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah. So I think the biggest issue is the efficacy of programs, which we are studying, and the timing of the services and getting them, you know, really kind of at point of entry, if you will, which will enhance the efficacy. And also, you know, making the decisions which we need to make that, you know, for some, the time for services has passed, and those are going to be case specific. Happy to sort of, you know, we've got a whole team working on, you know, looking at efficacy and working our progress so that we can intervene earlier, both sort of earlier in terms of number of cases and earlier in the life cycle of a specific case. And happy to, you know, if I can't remember how we said we would do it, I think emailing our host and connecting with Jacques, happy to kind of provide more detail offline.
That would be great. And we are working through, so we're getting close. So maybe we can finish this up. Shelley. Caught you off guard there.
Good evening. Thank you for meeting with us, District Attorney Bragg. Appreciate it very much. This past Friday night, got contacted by the FBI that there was a credible threat to our synagogue, which is on 91st Street, Young Israel. Fortunately, with the help of the 24th and the terrorism unit, we had no incident. But even on a day-to-day basis, we know that in the city and including our community, there's a spike in verbal and physical assaults upon people, particularly around hate crimes. The greatest in the city is anti-Semitic, Asian, Pacific Islander. But I know people, LGBTQ people, and older people, and other groups that are victims of the verbal and physical assault, but don't report them even because they don't believe that anything is going to be done, or they had experience where they had to somehow prove the connection. And how will your office deal with that?
Thank you,
Shelley. I think you hit the nail on the head. Well, two nails on the head, which is one, it is a significant issue. We have a great leadership team on hate crimes in the DA's office, but we have such limited capacity. So we are working to increase the capacity and also to increase the community engagement to let folks know that we're kind of open for business, so to speak. But the other nail on the head you hit, which is something that I've kind of been very focused on, is the burden we put on victims in hate crime cases, which we don't put on others. So for those who don't know, the statute requires proof of motive, which is different than most penal law statutes, but it's not rocket science. And a lot of times what's happened in these investigations is that the onus is put on the victim to come forward with the motive. That's not right. If you get assaulted in some other kind of case, we don't ask you whether it was severe injury such that it's assault, you know, in the first degree versus second degree. We cut a subpoena and we get the hospital record. So what we're doing in these cases is stepping up the investigative rigor in connection with our law enforcement partners. Sometimes it gets screened out before it gets to us. So we're looking at the whole kind of workflow, but cutting the subpoena to look at the social media, to look at the email, to look at the text, to build the circumstantial evidence to prove motive that the victim may not know. And sometimes we may do it and maybe we can't prove it. So be it. But we got to look and we got to have a full investigation with all the rigor. And that's the plan. And it is something that I'm feel passionately about, having spent a lot of time with the statute, both in prior practice and also in academia.
Great.
I just wanted to jump in real quickly and just add, you mentioned different groups of people who have particular concerns, LGBTQ communities, seniors. The other thing that Jacques and my team does is we coordinate to bring out prosecutors with expertise in each of the different topics, hate crimes, crimes against seniors, and we can come and talk to the groups and hopefully build trust or work with different agencies in your community to help build sort of a bridge between folks who are concerned about coming forward and our unit in the office that works with victims. So again, to emphasize that Jacques is available to all of you for, to talk about any of the things we've talked about so far, but also to set up opportunities for presentations and community conversations on hate crimes, crimes against seniors, domestic violence. A whole host of presentations and conversations are available to the communities that you are all in. So please take us up on that.
Thank you, Estelle. And Shelley is one of our co-chairs of our HHS, and they've done incredible work last year. So I'm sure they're going to take you up on that. We've got a few more, and I think hopefully we can work through them. Sarah, you're up next.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking this time out of your personal evening to be here, and thank you for everything that you're doing so far, SDA. I wanted to just go back to traffic violence for a minute. Last year, 268 New Yorkers were killed by vehicles, which is almost on par with guns, actually, when you consider that many gun deaths are suicides or between people who know each other, whereas traffic violence is almost always random. Just today, a woman was brutally mowed down in Brooklyn while she was crossing in the crosswalk with the walk sign. A car just turned into her and mowed her down, killed her immediately. The officers on the scene implied that there was really no wrongdoing, and these acts are usually not prosecuted. A few years ago, DA Vance had at one point proposed some state level legislation that would make it easier for him to prosecute drivers who kill people, but it didn't go anywhere. I'm wondering if that's something you've thought about pushing for again, or is there any other way that you'll address this carnage on our streets? Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, and you're all thanking me for my time. It's one of me. I'm looking at the screen. There's like 180 of you all giving the same amount of time. So I thank y'all. Yeah, it's just something that we've thought about. I'm familiar with the sort of the request of the DA. I do think that we can use our sort of our current tool. And I believe the DA did a grand jury report. Which is where that recommended legislation came out of. And so, yeah, look, we agree with that. We think those changes would be good, but even under the current law, we've got more to do. I mean, some of this is about, matching resource to, what the most pressing issues are. That statistic you gave is very sobering. And that's part of what we're doing now, kind of assessing the office and where to drive resources. But definitely, support the kind of grand jury recommendations, but short of that passing, I think we can still do more and will do more.
Thank you. So we got two more, and we can get to that history report. So we're going to have Arena go, and then we'll have Rich go, and that's going to close the session. Arena?
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, DA Bragg, for joining us tonight. It's really marvelous that you're here, and congratulations on your election. I want to talk a little bit about the courts. Prior to the start of COVID, there were already delays, trial delays, and that has only been exacerbated since the pandemic. There are just so many, and you know this better than I, you probably are more familiar with the numbers than I am, but there are just countless men and women sitting in jails waiting for a trial. And I wonder what you have been thinking about prior. I mean, you've been in this space for so many years. I was listening to Preet Bharara talk about you're one of the top prosecutors. What can we do to give to increase, the speed of trials? It's a constitutional right that people should have a speedy trial. People sitting in jails for years just waiting for a trial. What are you thinking about with respect to improving the speed in which people can come to trial?
It's a very significant issue, and I will say, I appreciate the kind words, and have been in this space for 20 years. I don't think anyone's seen anything like this, right? In terms of, the pandemic and what that's done to the kind of courtrooms. I don't know if you've been or anyone else has been to court recently, and you see the plexiglass and, the rules about being spaced out. We've got juries kind of in the gallery, kind of behind the lawyers. So a lot of this is pegged to the improving health and getting back in. I mean, right now to have a basically a trial, you kind of need double the space between two courtrooms. And so this backlog, particularly in tandem with the conditions at Rikers, is particularly disturbing. I talked just yesterday to, court leadership. It is something I can say. I mean, I know some have sort of, kind of put this, at the feet of the court. It is something they're thinking about every single day. And I think it's another one of the examples where we kind of just have to all be kind of, on the same team and collaborating, because, the district attorney's office has to be ready. Corrections has to produce the person, from Rikers Island. There's got to be court space. The defense attorney has to be ready. The judge has to have the calendar cleared. And I think we're doing that. We're having those conversations. The really challenging part is triage, right? We have, for example, we know the research shows that kind of the speed to trial and the certainty of punishment are really significant deterrents. And so we're trying to, prioritize guns and have particular tracks for guns. That's important. But then we also, as you said, have people who've been in custody for 2+ years waiting for a trial, and that's important. And it's really kind of on a micro level going through and doing what can only be called triage. And I got to tell you, it's probably one of the most kind of challenging administrative issues I think we faced in the administration of criminal justice, certainly since I've been in the space. But we're focused on it, and folks are focused on talking. And I think that's the critical. And I'm hopeful that we're turning a corner on COVID, and that's the key. If we can get the all into one courtroom and do a trial with a jury in the trial box, we can open the spigot back and start things flowing the way they used to.
Thank you. And the last word will go to Rich Robbins.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. Of course, public safety is paramount, but especially in a supposedly progressive place like the Upper West Side, I worry that people lose sight of the reasons why you were elected. And two specific issues, fare evasion and bail reform. There are important principles here, such as being innocent until proven guilty, and the point just raised about the constitutional right to a speedy trial, and also having the punishment fit the crime, such as for a $2.75 fare. And of course, that's not to say that we should tolerate fare evasion. I think it's really important for you to be doing exactly what you're doing right now, and really appreciate that you're here and hope you come back. I want to hear more defense of the policies that led to your being elected. I'm also a data person and recommend publishing more data that can be really effective at countering anecdotes. But my question for you, and a fitting final question, is do you think you've been misunderstood?
Haven't we all on some level? Look, I take, I think your beginning statement and your question, and I assume probably purposely so, are connected. I think I've spent a lot of time talking about public safety the last few weeks in a traditional sense, because I think people who read the day one memo, either directly or through reporting, got the impression that I don't care about public safety. And so I'm spending a lot of time talking about my work in that space, how we give that primacy, and probably have spent less time talking about some of the other things that you've been talking about. So on fair evasion, I think it's important to say, look, there's accountability there. I mean, there's a civil summons, right? And that's to me an appropriate, government sanction. Let's save the sanction of restriction of liberty for something that really involves a direct threat to our public safety, and something that to kind of get to the second half, and maybe tie the first half of the question to the second half of the question is much of the things that have been kind of put in the kind of fairness bucket are public safety issues. Like you look at the research and it shows, we all read the 8th time someone interacts with the system and does something tragic and horrific. We know if we can connect that person to services, the chances of avoiding that is better. That's something that is fair and humane, and also through the lens of racial justice is going to address equities, and it's also going to make us safer. So yes, I would like to be talking about both because I think they go hand in hand. But I do think some part I own of not being putting a legalistic memo out without the proper scaffolding. So we've been talking more to clarify the misunderstandings, but they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand and inextricably linked, and we're doing the work of both every day in the Manhattan DA's office.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your generosity of time, and certainly want to thank you for coming as well. One of the things I've been most impressed with is your availability to everyone. So thank you so much for working through all these questions. For that in itself, if I had a little award, I'd give you, but I don't have one. I want to thank your team. I've been working with them. They've been great. We look forward to building a relationship with Jacques and you guys. And what I will say that regardless of anyone's opinions, I think we all support you. We all win when you win. So we all may have diverse opinions, but at the end of the day, we want to support you in what you do. And the last thing I'd say is not how you start, it's how you finish. So I think I said that last time we spoke. So we want you to finish strong, and we want to do what we can do to support you. But again, you've been incredibly generous of your time. And I'm very impressed that you've chosen to sort of engage the community after a little bit of a bumpy start, which I think you've acknowledged, but I think you're out here. And the more I've gotten to know you, I've been impressed. So you'll have my support. I'm very confident you'll have the community board support. And hopefully you've done a great job in sort of getting our entire community here on the Upper West Side as well. So thank you for your time. And we want to let you get back to what's really important, that history report, your family.
Well, I appreciate you all. And I look forward to having more conversation. And I know y'all are doing this work every day. And I appreciate what you said, because I think we're all in this together. And I look forward to continuing to talk and doing the work and coming back and reporting you on the work, getting more feedback, and then going back to work. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Jacques, if you want to stay on, there was a lot of Q&As. If you want to fill those out or take notice, I'll allow you. We couldn't get to all the questions, but I noticed that you've been answering some of them, and I encourage you to send any. But thank you very much. We're going to move on, and we're going to move on to our next session. So thank you, everyone from the DA. So we're going to jump into our business session. I know that we are a little later, but I think it was well worth it. And that was a really good session and important. So perhaps we can pick up time. We'll see how it goes. So we're going to start with our first matter. We're going to do the transportation. There are two different matters. I always say they look like they could be quick, and then I always regret it. So we'll have you guys get into it and see how it goes. But let's start with our transportation committee. Howard or Andrew, one of you guys can handle these?
Andrew?
Yes, I'm going to handle it. Thanks. I was muted. So we have two revocable consents. Should be relatively quick. One, we approved a renewal of a revocable consent to the Department of Transportation for 70 Lincoln Center Plaza, which is also 165 West 65th Street, to continue and maintain and use 4 levels of an underground garage under and along the north sidewalk. None of the committee had any issue with this. It was unanimously approved, and I submitted.
Great. So we want to take the vote?
Call the question.
Great.
Okay, so all those supporting number one, please raise your hand. Bev or
Yeah,
Seema, who am I counting with today?
I'm counting.
We're counting and Seema is recording. Okay, great. Great, so if everyone can raise their hands, we'll give it a few more seconds. And I'll ask everyone to stop. Great. Okay, so again, just for people that may be new the first time to community board, we're only asking for community board members to vote during this section. So I see 36. How about yourself, Beth?
37 now.
All right, we're going to stop again, I know, and we're going to vote. So let's start first with the digital hands. Do you want to confirm that?
Now it's 38.
I know. So let's leave it at 38 and we're stopping. Non-digital hands, I'm raising my hand. Blanche, I don't know if you're on. Yep. So is there anybody else who's not raising their digital hand? Great. So I think that's 38 and 2, Bev.
30, 40, yes.
Great. Now, nobody should raise their hand. If we can lower the hands again, Christian. Okay, anyone, we're gonna ask everyone to stop. If you can lower the hands again, Christian. Christian, can you lower all the hands? Great. Everyone against, now raise your hand. Wait a few seconds. I don't see any digital hands, Bev, do you?
No, 0.
Anybody who can't vote digitally, I believe it's only Blanche and I. People should know that when you're the host, you don't have a digital hand, and that's why I do so. Great. Want to close that? Okay, Bev. So 2, right? I mean 0. Sorry. We'll move on.
0.
Abstaining? Anybody abstaining? Okay, Bev?
0.
And anybody for cause? Great. You want to read it? You want to read it?
40 to 0 to 0 to 0.
Great. Go ahead. Andrew.
Thank you.
Two.
Our second item is another revocable consent for a proposed stoop and fenced-in areaway on the north side of West 84th. It's for 319 West 84th, which is obviously between West End and Riverside Drive. The committee approved this unanimously as well, so I submit it.
Call the question.
Great. So let's everyone who's supporting this raise their digital hand, and then we'll do the non-digitals. We're going to let everyone, we're going to give a little time because sometimes it takes a little time. Again, if you're raising yes, please put up your digital hand now. We're going to wait a little bit more. We're at 37. Anyone else want to raise their digital hand? We're going to close it out. Okay. Someone unraised their hand, and now they're unraising their hand. So I'm going to ask everyone to step away from your computers, as I jokingly say, and we're going to count it. So we're going to read it as is. Bev, you want to commit to the 37?
37.
Digital, I'm going to raise my hand. Blanche?
Yes.
Okay, I see it's now 38 digital. So I'm fine saying 40 and 2 if you're okay with that, Bev.
40.
Great. I mean 38 2 being 40. Great.
Yeah.
Christian, if you can lower all the hands. Anybody against? I'm going to go a little quicker because I don't think there's anyone. Anybody abstaining? Susan, I have you as an abstention, so that's 1. I only bring that up because that was a mistake, let me know, but we have an abstention. And then anybody for cause. Okay, you want to read that, Bev? Bev, do you want to confirm that?
Bev, you're muted. 40 to 0 to 1 to 0.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to preservations. And I think, Michelle, in the beginning of the meeting, you said there may be the person who applied for this may be here to speak as well.
Yes, but
Okay,
Kay's going to do this.
Kay, why don't you give your presentation and then we'll allow them the opportunity.
Sure. Very good. Thank you. We have count them one resolution for you tonight. It concerns 61 West 86. It also is 541 Columbus Avenue, a familiar corner to many of us. 2 or 3 things to say at the outset. One is our committee's, of course, happy to see this this building, the first floor, the store infill get some needed attention. We had a number of questions and issues, which we invited Mr. Giannopoulos, who's the owner and also the architect, to address and try to, the resolution, as you have possibly noticed, is a resolution to disapprove, but there are several things that we listed, some changes that our committee would like to see. And so I'll invite, once I'm done with the presentation, I'll certainly invite Mr. Giannopoulos to come and address us and see if this has been addressed to all of our satisfaction. Okay, so here it is, Columbus and 86th. And Mark, let's just scroll through. You see that we're concerning only that first floor. Here you have some historical pictures, including one that way back when the Columbus Avenue L was still in existence, or it got turned into scrap. And some of the issues that we looked at concern the material on the facade, both the historic material and some of the replacement material. You'll see on the picture on the right, if you're familiar with the building, down at the bottom, some pretty ridiculous looking fake stone there. We're glad to see that go. I think I speak for the committee about that. So, all right, what else we got? So this will show you the area that we are talking about, a significant area on the avenue and a smaller portion of the facade, the lower facade on the street, on 86th Street. Okay, and this is that's the existing. Here's what Mr. Giannopoulos proposes to do with it, and I think the consistency of the proposal and so forth are some of the things that we felt speak well of it. As I'll get to some of the questions we had about it though in a moment. Is that it, Mark? Or okay, so here's the a rendering of what the new storefronts will look like. Our questions, I'll just share that with you. It's part of the resolution. One concerns the color of the sign band, replaced by a material that matched we wanted to be replaced with a material that matched the Flemish red elements above, rather than something that would stand out as too light. We thought that would be a significant improvement. The configuration of the sign band, we would like that to be made uniform across Columbus Avenue and West 86th Street facades. Third, the mini cornice line of brown stone above the sign, and we want that to be made a uniform width and continued across the entire storefront, including beneath the fire escape on the West 86th Street elevation there. And I think I think we can see that maybe that has certainly been addressed. And then our fourth suggestion was that the Campford Entrance, that may be a new word for many, that means an entrance that was proposed to be on an angle rather than face either of the street or the avenue. So our suggestion is that Campford Entrance door be replaced with something that's coplanar with the Columbus Avenue facade. All right, I hope that's clear. That's been in, you've had that resolution in front of you. But as I say, we did invite Mr. Giannopoulos to come and talk to us because we are interested in this project moving forward. So if it's all right with everybody, I'd like to hear him address these issues if he's willing.
We can do that. I do have just a clarifying question.
Yeah.
What are we voting on today? Because I see the questions. Are we voting to approve it, or what are we voting on today? I guess can you clarify that for everyone?
Yeah, the resolution is a disapproval resolution.
Okay, so you're approving to disapprove, but you're giving him an opportunity to answer these questions, correct?
And that's exactly right.
Great, thank you. Is that this person here? Did we promote them?
Can I just say this application will be in front of LPC next week on the 8th. So we appreciate that you're giving him some time to talk about what changes, if any, he will make between now and the 8th.
And we know he's been working with the landmark staff. So
Christian, did we promote them? What's the person's name, Kay?
Mr. Giannopoulos.
Thought I just saw it. Did anybody else?
I just promoted him.
Okay, good.
Sir, are you here? Is it Giannopoulos? Is that it? Mr. Giannopoulos, are you here? Can you speak? Perhaps you're muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay, I think we wanted to give you an opportunity to speak. I think we're at a point where they're voting to disapprove because of these various things. Kay sort of brought them out, and if you'd like to address them, but those are the concerns that the committee has, and that's why they're voting in this manner.
Well, we have addressed, since our last meeting with the community board, we addressed the issues that they were proposing. And actually, we also met with landmarks. We walked the site with landmarks. They were also in agreement with a lot of, the items that the community board was alluding to too. And it was the only thing that they were in agreement with is also the Campford Entrance that they were actually in agreement with maybe keeping it. There's a photo that was shown by one of I forgot the gentleman's name that was just presenting.
Kay Carpin.
There was a photo from back in 1940 that showed actually the Campford Entrance from back then. So we're gonna actually, they were in agreement to actually leaving it. That was the only thing that's the only thing that changed.
Okay, so the rest of the items we're in agreement about, and then the one thing that you would like to keep is that chamfered entrance, that angled entrance.
Yeah, that was the only thing. We matched the color of the stone is going to match the brown stone that's right up above the cornice. That's in the front. There's also a brown stone that right above it. We're going to match that brown color of the brown stone, and I mean everything else that you brought up. We addressed on the drawings.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So where does that leave us, Kay?
Okay, well, that leaves us with a resolution to disapprove.
You think about this, and I see Jay has his hand up, and I'll come back to you.
That sounds great.
And now we have more hands up. So I'll go through them, and then we're gonna have to work on what this means to this resolution.
Yeah, this clearly takes an attorney rather than a preacher to figure.
Everyone will have the opportunity to now vote. You may say I want to recommend, but there's lots of hands up now, so this has become a bit of a popular session. So
okay.
I had called Jay's name first, so let's start with Jay.
At the committee meeting, I agreed with all of the concerns that the committee had, except that I was fine with the chamfered door, and I'm glad to see that landmarks agreed. My suggestion, and there's nothing that, as far as I know, that prevents us from doing so, that with the applicant having made all of the suggested changes that we wanted, except for the chamfered door, which apparently is going to be approved by landmarks in any event. I see nothing wrong with reversing the resolution and making it a resolution to approve with the suggested changes in place. And I would unless someone objects, I would so move.
Well, does somebody want to second Jay's? I may have to ask Richard.
I'll second that.
So there's two people that are doing this. Richard, are you here? Can you kind of help me through the parliamentary issues on this? You're not on my first screen. I'm going to go to the backup there and the previous parliamentarian, Shelley. Shelley, could you kind of help us work through the dynamics of how this should be?
Okay, I think very close to what Jay's suggesting, to make an approval on the condition that those things that were objected to, those same things, will be in place, so that it's basically taking the same resolution, but making the approval conditional on those things being done.
I would second that, Stephen.
Yeah, I
Still going to vote.
agree. I agree with that, except for the door, which will not be changed. So all
Right,
of the other conditions.
Right.
The Campford,
Right.
If that's acceptable.
So I just, thank you, Jay. So the fact that two people, where are we at, Shelley? Do we have to vote on this to move? Or if the co-chairs allow this, it's a friendly change to the amendment? What needs to
It's
happen?
not friendly. It's not friendly at all. It's reversing. Okay.
It's a substitute motion, right?
Substitute motion. Yes.
Yes.
So we
Which
will
takes
vote,
precedent.
technically, we would vote on the substitute motion.
Right.
That will take precedent. If that passes, it'll make the original motion moot.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to continue to go through hands, but what now has happened is people can still vote up or down, but actually what we're voting on is going to subtly change, and I'll clarify it. But let's go through an opportunity for everyone just to share their opinions on this. We've worked this out. Nothing's going to change. We're going to go through people's opinions or to share their concerns. I'm going to have one of our new members who hasn't spoken yet, Anthony Thomas, go first. Glad to see you raise your hand and want to encourage him to speak.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Curious to hear from Mr. Giannopoulos or folks from the committee, just curious about what the business space would be used for, what ideas do they have under consideration?
Mr. Giannopoulos, could you give feedback on that?
Sure, it's going to be local retail establishments, something that's going to pertain to the neighborhood, helping out the neighborhood, either restaurants or yoga studios, stuff like that.
Thank you. Robert, your question?
Yeah, I'm very happy that that door, if I'm saying the word correctly, the Chanson door at that angle remains, because I think it's a very appealing old world touch, and I like it. Now, what I was going to ask, which I don't think is any necessarily still a question, since we're amending the resolution and accepting conditionally, that there were, I happened to attend that meeting, which was a very exciting meeting, I don't know, for me. The issues that I had raised were considered to be, considered to be.
No, I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad people like our meeting. I was supporting your statement.
Our meetings are always exciting, Robert.
Exactly.
That were considered, that were considered leasing issues. So just for my information, the separation of issues between landlord issues, which is the brick, but the questions that I had on appearance and because the whole facade now seems quite flat, and the committee didn't object to that flatness. But then I understood the landlord to say that those were leasing issues. And the renter.
The question is, Robert, do you have a question?
And that is, so what is that delineation between landlord issues and leasing issues?
I'm not sure. Maybe if Kay or Michelle can answer that. Do you have an answer to that?
The landlord is, he would be, we could hear from Kay and the landlord if the landlord is still here.
Well, I'll take the first shot. Of course, it depends on who rents the space and how to, obviously they would want to present their business in some fashion, but within that basic design pattern. So, Mr. Giannopoulos, do you have anything that you would like to say about that? Did I say that?
We're not really. You're referring to the signage, or you're referring to what exactly?
How the spaces, how the different spaces would look. I think, Robert, right? Were you?
Maybe just comment on what the spaces are going to look like. I think, if you want to, I think Kay answered the question. If you want to add something, you don't have to add something, but if you want to add something.
No, there's nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Peter.
The white sign band is completely foreign to everything else that's on that block.
Changing it.
And I don't support that at all. It's a very different look. If you look around on the rest of the block and the other blocks, you don't see that very shiny white sign band. And I find it to be too foreign to be able to support this.
And let's get clarification on that. I think we're in agreement to change that. Is that right, Mr. Anastasopoulos?
Yeah, the sign band is going to be something that we're going to agree with Landmarks as far as what colors they want us to actually, put up as a sign band. But I mean, it's not going to be a white. It's not going to be a white. We're going to actually do something more. We're going to take the tone of the brownstone and we're just going to tone it down a little bit. It's maybe it came out a little bit more whiter than it should have in the rendering, but it's not going to be a white color.
So why don't you have a rendering that shows that?
I mean, the rendering is there. Maybe it just it looks a little whiter than lighter than what it's supposed to be. That's all.
Yeah, but if you show the rendering again, it's very white.
Okay. Well, I think, Peter, what he's saying is it's not going to be white and it'll be another color. And I think we're acknowledging that perhaps maybe that decision was made after the rendering, or the rendering doesn't represent it the way it should. But that's his, you've asked about it and he's giving you some feedback on it.
Well, I think he should do it before we approve it.
Then again, you're free to disapprove. And I think that's where we only can vote on what we have here today. And I don't think that's going to change. We've got lots of other hands up. Ethel, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm finding this very confusing and I'm going to try to clarify, and I hope I can. Is my understanding.
Confusing at all.
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, is someone disagreeing?
There's a mic that was open. It wasn't meant for, it was an inverted mic. Why don't you go for it, Ethel?
Since I certainly wouldn't want someone to be unhappy as I begin to speak. I understood that from Mr. Giannopoulos and then from Kay, that a number of the recommendations made by the committee were in fact agreed to and in fact put forward by Landmarks, and Mr. Giannopoulos agreed. So therefore, it seemed to me, as I heard the summary, that Landmarks was agreeing with a number of the criticisms made by the committee. And so therefore, I began to think, well, this could be turned into an approval because of what I have said, as was told. The last point is that I believe Mr. Giannopoulos said that the question of leaving the chamfering and leaving it that way, which I think the committee questioned that, was at variance with the Landmarks Commission, which wants the chamfering as in the original design. I then thought, if that's what is going to be approved, the changes asked for by the committee, the chamfering, which I think is very good and should go, and it is in line with the original design. I thought we can change and approve the entire thing.
That's exactly what's being proposed.
Jay.
And that's, if I may, Jay. And so, with respect, I would like to say that we, in fact, change the resolution for an approval with those particular points made and summarized.
That is what I believe has happened. I think that's a summary of what has happened, Ethel.
Well, I was trying to make it clearer than at least I understood it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethel. Okay, we have some more hands. We're going to, again, choose people that have never spoke for the meeting, and then we'll go into other people. So Paige, if you'd like to go. You gotta unmute yourself.
Thank you. Just very quickly, it's very unusual to reverse black and white on so many design issues that frankly were not really resolved when we saw it the first time. It's not only the white, it's not only the color that was not adequately configured, but also the step up, how you handle going into the different units, the very severe modern trim for all of the window and signage bands, no dimensions given as to how they were going to manipulate those. And it's really, I think it's great that the commission is acknowledging a lot of our comments, but there was no details that I feel comfortable about agreeing to, because this is such a change. And I'm surprised that the applicant didn't come back to the community board with this information before tonight so we could have evaluated it. So I'm going to suggest that even though there's a promise that or a hope that this application will be approved by the Landmarks Commission, I do not feel comfortable, having not seen no details or confirmation exactly of what this very important intersection will look like. And I think we should deny it and then go to the hearing and hear and see what is actually being proposed. I, for one, would recommend voting against this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Mark.
Thank you. I'm heartened to hear that the applicant has taken the committee's recommendations seriously, and I think that that would be a good thing to follow through on. I don't think that that is a grounds to reverse the motion. I'm sorry, the resolution that came out of committee. One reason is what Peter said, that while we have an oral representation that a change is being made, the documents on which we are being asked to vote don't reflect it. Now, it may be technical, but at the end of the day, a disapprove unless and an approve on condition that are philosophically the same thing. We had a long discussion at committee about the difference between those two things, and the committee opted to go the route that you see before you in the printed materials. So my knee-jerk reaction is to adopt the resolution as originally proposed, and then as our wonderful chairs and others often do, go to Landmarks when this is heard in public hearing. And if in fact the presentation makes clear that the things we care about have indeed been changed, that we acknowledge that and thank them openly in the live testimony, rather than water down a resolution that was fully discussed at committee. So my vote will be no, not because I think that the answer is wrong, but because procedurally, I think that's the best approach to make sure that our wishes are carried through as amply discussed at committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. And just to clarify, because I think it's a little bit different than our normal process, I think what Paige and yourself are saying is you're going to vote to disapprove, even though you have a verbal assurance that's concerning that it's presented here. And if we do that, the chairs can always show up the day of the voting and speak into that. Again, I'm just summarizing what I believe I heard. Great, let's continue on. Clary?
Well, I agree with Mark. I thought when we started the discussion this evening and we're doing the switching it around to approve, we had a fairly clean record in front of us. And if you felt you just would not approve this chamfered door, then you would vote no on the new resolution. And if you were okay with the chamfered door and the rest of it was now better, or we were told it was going to be better, then you would vote yes. But once Peter spoke, I looked back at a new rendering that we received this afternoon, which showed the whole signage band as being bright white. So we're back, in my view, where we were at the committee meeting, where we're seeing one thing and being told, oh, it's going to be something different. And that makes me uncomfortable because we haven't seen the something different. this bright white, very broad modern signage band is really a very significant element. So I guess to just get around to where I started, I think that Mark is correct that we ought to keep the original resolution and vote yes or no, and hope that by the time the hearing takes place at the Landmarks Commission, the things that we have not liked will have been changed adequately. And at LPC, they'll either go for the chamfer door or they won't.
Thank you, Clary. Michelle, do you want to wait to speak last as co-chair, or do you want to speak now?
Oh, whatever you want.
I'll defer to
Yeah,
you. You're the co-chair.
Yeah, I will go with what Peter, Clary, Mark, and Paige said. I don't think we should change this resolution. I am happy that LPC has agreed with our conditions, and I will wait. We will go to LPC because we do go to those meetings, and I will wait to see what happens at the LPC meeting with our resolution as presented to the full board.
Thank you. So we have two more speakers that haven't spoken yet, and then Jay has his hand up again. So I'll have Rich go, and then we'll have Arena go, and then we'll figure it from there. If we have time, we'll have Jay speak again. So Rich, your thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick, I share the concern about the response to Peter, and I think we should stick with the resolution from committee where there was a full discussion about the issues. My question is, when there's a discrepancy between the plan and what we're being told orally, what are we voting for? So if we were to vote in favor, is that of the plan as we're seeing it that has the concern that Peter raised, or is it of the verbal promise? But because of that issue, I think that we should vote against the amendment. Thank you.
I believe the answer that I see, Rich, is we're voting to pass based on the verbal promise, and then I'll clarify that before, but that's how I believe it to be now. But I'll clarify with the co-chairs before we vote. Arena.
Thank you. This corner has been a blight for probably well over 20 years, probably longer. It's just been awful. That diner that used to be on the corner has been out of there for a very, very long time. So I welcome activation of this block, this part of Columbus Avenue. But I agree with Paige and Mark. I think that the committee, Kay and Michelle, had very thoughtful recommendations. And if they were also agreed upon by the commission, then I think it would have behooved Mr. Giannopoulos to come back to the board today with revised renderings reflecting the changes that were recommended. I think there's significant changes that the committee asked Mr. Giannopoulos to consider, and if they were approved also by Landmarks, then I think it's important for us to see what it's going to look like. And if we do nothing else, we should make any approval conditional, but I don't even think we should proceed with even a conditional approval before we or Michelle and Kay, if they go to the hearing, have an opportunity to see exactly what the changes are. I think the signage is all wrong here, and we don't have any assurances that that has been changed either by Landmarks or Mr. Giannopoulos. Thank you.
Thank you, Arena. Doug, and then that'll be the round of first.
So in full disclosure, I represent this landlord. I'm the leasing agent. I am not eligible to vote. I will not be voting, but I just wanted to add a couple of things. There's a question regarding what kind of tenants and what the idea is. Usually retail tenants are looking for some more glass, and that's being reflected in the design, because right now, if you look at it, it's squashed. But the other, my understanding, and again, I'm not voting, but that the committee's resolution was to disapprove unless the applicant met with LPC and agreed with all of the conditions except the chamfered door. And so I think that's exactly what's happening here. And
I think the concern is, Doug, just to clarify, because we're talking a lot about process, is
he has verbally said it's happening, but we've seen no renderings, and there's a concern that a verbal is not enough to do so. I'm just speaking factually. If you're asking for factually, the issue that you're accurate, but I think there's concerns that people would feel more comfortable if there was more process or if they saw a picture, and that's what we will vote on.
Understood. And I would just tell you that we are entertaining multiple proposals. They're all, I consider, quality neighborhood uses. It has not been determined yet. So, but I hope you know that I'm doing my very best to bring good neighbors to our neighborhood.
Thank you, Doug. So we have 2 second hands raised. I'm going to ask each of them to be brief because we're now very much behind, and we had a DA session that went double. So Jay, if you can be brief, and then Clara, if you can be brief, we'd like to get into the voting.
Yeah, just a point of information. Signage has to be approved at landmarks as well. So when somebody comes and they want to propose various kinds of signage, they have to come back. So that's the first thing. So whether it's white or it's tan, the type of lettering, whether they want blade signs, all kinds of issues arise. So we frankly needn't be concerned at this point what the signage is going to look like. My second observation is that, as Doug pointed out, we disapprove that unless Mr. Giannopoulos agreed to all of these. He did so with landmarks at the site, approving them, and considering what's going on in our neighborhood. As Irene so articulately said, this corner is a blight. You know, every third store in our neighborhood now is empty and deteriorating. Many of them are garbage strewn. And here we have somebody that's spending the effort and the money to fix this blight. I think we should give him his support. If the sense of this board is not to do that, frankly, I'll withdraw my proposed reverse amendment and let the chips fall that they may. But I will vote against any disapproval at this point. And I think this board needs to support people who are doing something positive in this community and rely upon their good faith that in fact they're going to make those changes.
Thank you, Jay. Clary, did you want to add something? And then
I took my hand down, Steve. I think your description was not 100% correct, but I think we all kind of know enough about what we need to do.
Okay, well, there'll be some further clarification here, and I'll ask Shelley to come in. So I guess, Jay, I'm asking you, are you withdrawing it? I don't know. Where are we at? Because right now, I think that you have put something forward that's been that Robert confirmed, and it was we're going to now vote on a substitute resolution to pass it conditional on these changes being made.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to vote
can
on.
Take 2 minutes. I would call the question on that substitute resolution.
And Shelley, did I describe that correctly, or do you want to add something?
Perfect. We need, since there was a substitute motion and it was seconded, we need to vote on it.
Great. So what we are voting on now is that we are now voting to pass this resolution conditional on the verbal changes. Correct? Okay. Do you want to hear Michelle? Great. So that is what we're going to vote on now. So for all of those who do want to pass for those conditionals, please raise your hand. I think this is going to be rather close, so I'm going to ask people to really focus on their digital hands. I'm going to ask everyone to stop. Blanche, are you on? Do you have a position on this yet? I don't know, Blanche. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Deb, do you want to confirm the digital?
Ready?
Okay, so that's the vote. It's 20.
I'm 21.
Okay, so that's 21. Thank you, Blanche. Those of you, let's lower those hands. Those of you against, raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to keep pausing because this is very close. Bev, do we want to? I see 15.
15.
Okay, let's lower those hands. Let's do everyone abstaining, and I'm going to abstain, so you can put me in here, Bev. Anybody else abstaining? Okay.
Ethel's abstaining.
Ethel, are you verbally abstaining, or did you raise your digital hand before? Okay, so it's 2 abstentions. We have you now, Ethel. Let's
Add me
look
for
those.
ineligible, sorry.
Let me get to you, Doug, and then we'll have you vote. And for those ineligible. You want to raise your hand? Thanks. So 1 ineligible. So let's read that in.
21 to 15 to 2 to 1.
So it passes, right?
Yes.
Great.
Now you need to actually vote on the resolution.
No, you don't.
No.
Yeah, you do.
Because a resolution was passed as a substitute, which negates the motion.
Correct.
Not how I read Roberts, but okay.
Okay. Well,
Because you might get more votes. You might get a stronger vote now. One was the vote to substitute the resolution. The other is whether to adopt. And our board has sometimes voted more voluminously on the second.
Okay.
Once you vote a substitute motion, you cannot vote on another. It ends it.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Mark. I'm gonna choose to. I think it's my prerogative to choose to rely on Shelley because he was the parliamentary. He was had that role before. So Shelley, I believe your position is there is not another voting and we are done. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so we are done with preservations.
How do we mark it on the sheet? Do we is it the same on the voting sheet?
Christian, do you want to give your, should we revert? What do you want to do, Christian, on the voting sheet? Christian, you still here with me?
Mark it the way you voted, so you mark it yes if you voted yes for the substitute resolution.
So vote number 3 will be the substitute resolution and just mark it as you voted. And there'll be a substitute resolution in there, which is what Jay put forward. That's the answer.
So what do you vote for?
You vote for what you just voted, Peter. If you voted no, put no in space number 3. If you voted yes, put yes. I abstained, I will put abstention. Okay? Great, let's move on. We're going to BC. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Linda.
Hi, BCI, Christian, and so there's just one place to vote. We got bundled in the resolution sheet, but there were 3 applications. The first was for a hotel, which, by the way, the patch described as 18,000 square feet. It's at 100 square feet, big difference. The second one was going to be just a part of a luxury senior housing on 85th Street and Broadway. They want to serve liquor. I think that people living there can have their own martinis, and that's that. Then the third one was the same ownership, but change of corporate, the change of the corporation. That was it. So it's pretty pro forma and pretty easy. I see there's a question.
Yeah, I'm not eligible on the latter 2, but they're bundled, so I'm not sure how to deal with that with voting.
Oh wow.
Vote for the 2 that you can and not for the 1 you can't.
Yeah, except they bundled them already. They're on the resolution.
But it just get marked that she didn't vote for that one.
Okay. So any other questions?
I'm going to pause for 1 second. Christian, did anybody sign up for this section?
No.
I'm going to keep going on, but there's a Gail Edwin that's had the hand up. I don't know if it's for this section because I've seen it up. So Gail, I'm gonna promote you, but we are now talking about the BCI things. Again, I think you took your hand down now. Thank you. So there is no questions. Linda, why don't you go to item 2?
That was it.
Or item, whatever, you know.
They were all liquor license applications for full liquor licenses. Krista, do you have anything to add?
No, it's just a one vote for it's a bundle for the licenses.
So
to call the question.
Call the question.
Let's call the question. All those voting for the bundled number 4, please raise your hand. Okay, we're going to wait a little bit. Okay. I'm raising my physical hand. Blanche, are you here? Do you want to verbalize your vote?
Yes.
Okay, so that's combining. So Bev, 35 and 2?
35 plus 2, 37 in favor.
Right, Christian, can you lower the hands? Those of you against? I'm going to pause a little bit. I'm going to move on. I think that's 0. Those of you abstaining?
One.
Okay. 1. Let's lower that. And those of you for cause? That's Melissa.
1.
Okay, you want to read it?
37 to 0 to 1 to 1.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Parks and Environment.
Okay, that's me tonight. I jotted down a few notes because I think it'll help save some of the questions at the end. So I'm just going to read them to you. Theodore Roosevelt Park, which wraps around the Museum of Natural History on all 4 sides, is a New York City-owned park. Friends of Roosevelt Park is a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation with an unpaid board, like all nonprofit boards, and a memorandum of understanding with the museum to help keep this 12-acre park looking beautiful. In return, Friends of Roosevelt Park received some funding from them. For complete disclosure, I am a board member, as is Linda Alexander, one of the original founders of the Dog Run. For over 2 decades, there have been serious issues regarding the Dog Run, which is called bull moose. The decibel level emanating from the park, as measured in the windows of some of the apartments across the street on West 81st Street, measured 2 times the legal limit as determined by Cerami, the premier sound experts in the country. This was a project undertaken by Friends of Roosevelt Park. As the park is not closed at night, the barking goes on at any hour of the night and is, needless to say, a terrible problem. The Friends group hired Cerami again to come up with ways to lessen the noise. All of those potential solutions are in the resolution, and to date, all were rejected for either lack of effectiveness or aesthetics. Compounding the situation, dog owners, instead of using bull moose, have cut the hurricane fencing surrounding the lawns closest to 81st Street, and the barking, now a lot closer to the apartments, has become even worse. This resolution calls for 2 things. 1, that the Department of Parks and Recreation immediately close bull moose nightly at 9 p.m. excuse me, and reopen it again at 7 a.m. And 2, that a concerted effort be undertaken immediately, either by PEP officers, those are Park Enforcement Patrol officers, or by the NYPD to enforce the rules about keeping dogs off the lawns. If this is not achievable, then we call upon the museum to install permanent, unbreachable fencing around the lawns being abused. And this resolution passed the committee. And if I'm allowed to share my screen, I do have a few photos I could show of the dogs on the lawns, but I don't know if I can do that.
If you want to show them, you can share your screen.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Let me make, you know what, let me make sure that
Oh, okay, it's disabled.
hold on.
Thank you.
I forgot, share.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can do it now. Sorry about that. That's the voting sheet.
Yeah, right. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Oh, for God's sakes.
Do we want to, how about if we open it up to some questions, and as you work through that, we can come back to the pictures?
You know what? I don't know what happened to it, and I think.
Why don't you take off screen sharing while you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a wonderful island that I saw, so I was feeling very relaxed, but, okay. Barbara, why don't we open it up
You
for
know what?
questions?
I'm gonna forgo them. I can vouch personally, and I know there are other people here as well who can vouch for the fact that there are numerous dogs on the lawns. In fact, Zach, who works for the museum, told me that he saw 20 or 25 dogs on the lawn at one time recently. So it's a major problem. You just have to trust me so we can move on, I think.
If you want, I can put it up if you want me to share a screen. I can do it.
Why don't we go into the questions, and I'll defer back Barbara by the time before we vote. If you want me to put up the pictures, we can do so, but why don't we get into some questions because the hands are raised, okay?
Stephen, there's also one public member sign off for this session.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we then have the public person go first, and then we'll go into the community board members.
That would
Hi.
be, yeah, right. No, yeah,
Hi, this is Lauren Brenowitz, and I live across the street on the Columbus Avenue side of the museum. I am a relatively recent, within the past 3 years, dog owner, and was waiting for the dog run with great expectations to be completed so that I could take my dog there. When it was completed, it was pretty obvious very early on that the substance that was put down was not only inadequate, but dangerous. It was sharp pebbles. It still exudes this orange dust. And it just was not a surface appropriate for dogs. My dog in particular has not been injured, so I will not speak to that. However, recently, there have been these large black rocks that have been appearing, and it seems that the rocks are coming up after all the precipitation. So it's been, what, 2 years, 2.5 years, year and a half since it was completed. And there are now these very large black rocks coming up to the surface, which can injure even more severely the dogs and also the people who are the dog owners. The fact that this substance was put down when it was inappropriate in the first place has been a conversation that I've had multiple times. I don't get answers from parks. I informally spoke with Peter Wright probably about a year ago, wanting to know why the dog owners were using the lawns. And I said, basically, because the dog run is not acceptable for the dogs to run on. And the land is here. It says it's going to be open for recreation. Yes, it did say no pets. However, it appeared that nobody was using it. So people started using it as an alternative to having their pets and or themselves injured. I feel, I'm a gardener. I know Ava very well. I feel very badly about what happens to the lawns, but on the other hand, there has been no alternative available where there is a fenced in area where the dogs can run. So that is how this came to pass, that people are using that space for the dogs, and it's for safety. Maybe some of the people are new to the dogs and don't know and see some people out there. I always, when I see somebody not picking up after themselves or have a dog is digging holes, I always remind them this is public space. Please clean up, please fill in the holes. Leave it as you found it.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you very much for your comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, let me just double check if there's any public attendees. Okay, so I'm going to go to board members. As always, if people don't know, if you haven't spoken yet during the meeting, I'll choose you first. So let's have Kristen Berger go.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify this resolution seems to have 3 parts. So the first part is to ask that the dog run close at 9 p.m. The second part is that is enforced. And then my concern is around the third part that says if that is not achievable, if that can't be enforced, then to put some sort of unbreachable fencing. And I don't know how we determine whether it's being properly enforced. And B, the concept of unbreachable fencing to me is like, like around a castle. I don't know what is envisioned, but it certainly doesn't seem appealing to put around a public park. So maybe if the authors of the resolution could speak a little to that third point, what they mean by all of that.
We were talking about the same type of fencing that you see all over Theodore Roosevelt Park. It's black iron fence. Right now, the museum has planned a pipe rail, which is only 2 feet high, and a small dog could easily hop right over it. A large dog could hop over it. A little dog could go right through the spaces between the 2 pipe rails. So that's what we meant. We didn't mean to create a jail at all.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Elizabeth?
Sure, and thanks everyone for this resolution. I'm going to vote in favor for it with a couple of questions. I do think, Barbara, from the committee discussion we had last week, it's important to note that we did have Manhattan Borough Commissioner William Castro join the meeting to talk specifically about enforcement. And I think that would be an important thing for you or Natasha to address tonight on the enforcement piece. I also think, again, I continue to think that for those who are new to the neighborhood or who are people who, care about their dogs, we want to, as a dog owner, we all want to do what's best. And I think we're all trying to do that. But again, I think the enforcement piece was really the one that wasn't addressed tonight so far. So for the full board, if you could address that, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say that the Bull Moose dog people were on the call and they all supported this very vigorously. They say that the dogs that are breaking the fence, which is a crime, first of all, and then putting their dogs there are not people from the neighborhood. They're not people who live around that park. And Commissioner Castro was at the entire meeting, and he said that he is going to, starting next week, even possibly this week, really blitz the area with fines that are given out to people who do violate the rule. And we're very hopeful for the first time that if he follows through with that, that we might actually be able to stop at that point.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
Yeah, I'm a member of the committee and I supported this, but I don't remember any discussion at the committee of involving the NYPD in this. And unfortunately, the resolution was on the screen very briefly when we voted on it, so I didn't have a chance to entirely read the last clause. And so the enforcement part, I really object to our asking the NYPD to get involved. This is why we have PEP officers to patrol our parks. And as Elizabeth said, Commissioner Castro was very clear that he's going to be cracking down. And I think we should strike NYPD from the resolution.
Okay, let's go through the other people and we can address how we want to handle that beforehand. Okay. Hold on, Linda.
Okay, I am one of the progenitors of the dog run, and we started working on it in 1996, and we got it open in 1998. There was a very strong leadership group, one of whom I believe is here, Jan, and she would like to speak. But we had leadership then, and we had dog noise committees, and we were, the dog runners were very committed, and this new group says they will be committed too. We did have issues with the pea gravel then. They put in new gravel on this one that's even worse. And so the commissioner says And the dog run groups, they say that they're going to change it, and I'm sure it will be changed. As for letting dogs run all over the lawns, I just want to make that statement. We have, and I worked on the group in Central Park, we have an opportunity between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. to go into the park with our dogs off leash. And we have 3 other dog runs, which don't have the problem of bull moose right now, that have good surfaces. So there are alternatives for dogs. There is no reason for what's going on. And I was corrected the other day by Commissioner Castro, because it was my understanding from our previous conversations that the PEP officers, that their budget had been decimated. It's back, and there were always PEP officers. And when people took their dogs around in the middle of the night, which they weren't supposed to, because we did lock it at 10 p.m. in those days, they got tickets. And because you have a dog run, and we worked so hard to get this dog run. And so the dog run will be improved. The new group of people there say that they will take a greater leadership community role, which will be great, because we have neighbors. And that's what the whole thing was. We worked with neighbors and locked it at 10 p.m. So that's all I have to say. And there are solutions, and they're very important that we find them.
Thank you, Linda. And I do see Jan's hand raised, and I'll call on her shortly. Jay.
Everybody should go buy a lottery ticket, because as Ken once said, I agree with him on the NYPD part. But just a quick question, Barbara, when you presented the resolution, you said that an acoustical engineer was engaged and came up with several solutions for noise abatement. Excuse me, and you said they were all rejected. Who rejected them?
They were rejected basically by Department of Parks.
So
Bill Castro rejected them. He was sure that the Public Design Commission would not go for some of them. He felt that one of them was too expensive, even though Gail Brewer, when she was our borough president, had promised us $300,000, which was the cost of the project. So it's not that we will not revisit these things at some time in the future. We will, but for right now, we're just asking for enforcement, and I would leave it up to the commissioner what kind of enforcement he wants to bring in. I don't really think that's my purview or yours.
Can you, in 2 seconds, just tell us what some of those solutions were?
Well, they are listed in the resolution, but
okay.
One of them were transparent panels that had to be 10 feet high, that would be on the fence that is common throughout Theodore Roosevelt Park, the black iron fence. They would be Friends of Roosevelt Park offered to put in a row the entire way of evergreen trees to screen that, in case people found the panels unattractive, distasteful in a park. That was one of them, and there were various other things that had been explored. Something called acoustic panel, which actually hung on the fence. It was ugly, or what could I say? And numerous other things. So
thank you, Jay. Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to have Jan back to the community, and you were referred to, and allow you to speak, Jan. You can speak.
Hi, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Oh yeah, I am, and there's an echo. Hold on. Okay, is this better?
It is.
Okay, great. Okay, oh boy, I've still got to talk. I've still got an echo. Can you take the next one and come back to me?
You are the last one. So
okay.
We can actually hear you okay. We're not hearing that echo.
Okay, great. Okay.
So if you can take it, we can hear you.
No echo, Dan.
Okay, so I've got a lot of talking points, and I'm going to spare you most of them and stick to the resolution. The 9 p.m. locking, I think, is going to backfire. I think it's draconian. The dog run was never locked at 9 p.m. It was 10 p.m. And actually, one of the spells when it was locked, it was 11 p.m. I'm thinking more of a carrot and a stick approach might work. start with 10 p.m. and get the word out that if things do not improve, it's going to be rolled back to 9 p.m. And the carrot will be, if everybody's really good and everybody cooperates and does the right thing with the lawn and the noise, then maybe we can reconsider leaving it open until 11 p.m. But 9 p.m., I think it's going to backfire. I think it's going to cause backlash, and the people are going to be worse than ever with violating the lawn and with kind of giving the middle finger about everything. So I don't want to take up more time. I've got a lot of points. I'll write them to the commissioner. I'll CC the board. A lot of it has to do with the replacement surface. And just one last plug for, and I think the commissioner hinted at revisiting the artificial grass, because the proliferation of dogs in the neighborhood, the attrition of the gravel is going to be really quick. And within a couple of years, that gravel is going to be gone, going to get back to the same old thing, the mud puddle, the disgruntled dog owners, and so forth and so on. And then lastly, and this is really out of the box, really, really out of the box, all this money that the city's throwing at this thing and that thing and the berries, which I think, frankly, to be perfectly blunt, no. The trees, no. Wondering if it's ever been considered to move the run. The area in the front of the museum, the lawn abutting Central Park West, the lawn towards 77th Street, is concealed from residences on 77th Street. The only building in earshot is the historical, what's it called, you know, you know what I'm saying, the
Yep.
Yes, thank you. And the wall of the museum is not flat. It's like creviced. It's like egg crate. And any noise would bounce. What noise that would bounce into Central Park. And the boundaries are already in place. The wall, the fencing, it's already in place. It would.
Thank you so much, Jan. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. And I think, but we have a resolution, and I think, again, those are good ideas. Generally, that should be done candidly at the committee level. So I think today we're voting on sort of where we're at. So Barbara, I wanted to say I will admit the unusual team of Jay and Ken have all wanted to request if you would remove the NYPD portion. Is that something you want to do? Or I think they weren't objecting to the PEP team, because that's it, but they wanted that. That's something you and Natasha need to decide if that's something you're willing to do.
Well, what if it says, or if it is absolutely necessary and as determined by the Department of Parks to call in the NYPD? I think the commissioner very, very much wants to help us solve this problem. He had asked for the resolution. He said he wanted all of these points to be made. And I think that ultimately it will be up to him to make a determination whether it's working or whether it's not working. And if it's not working, he may take some stronger step. And I don't want to.
So what about just leaving it instead of keeping the first 75% of what you said, but just not add NYPD? Just say you're going to leave it up to them to make the steps to address this.
Okay, fine.
Get there. Again, I'm only trying to get I'm just trying to come up to a medium path. So is that something that you're acceptable to, and are we all okay with? So we're going to remove the word NYPD. We're just going to say whatever, not that the commissioner should use whatever means he needs to accomplish the goal. A summary of that.
Okay.
I'll pause there. Susan?
I'm sorry. I want to say I probably should not, but given what's happened recently with the police department and the tragic loss of those two young officers, I just think it's incredibly disrespectful to our police force. They give their lives, literally. And I just think it's incredibly unacceptable to treat them that way. I'm going to vote for this to support it, but I think it's inappropriate not to enforce people breaking the law. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Heckscher ball field in Central Park. This is a ball field that's used by kids, and the dogs just running rampant on it. I hear people talk about all the time how the dogs are pooing all over it. It can't be used as a ball field. And I just don't understand what the problem is with enforcement. I have to say, Ken, at the committee meeting, I was shocked that you were not opposed to enforcement, because you always are. And now I understand why, because she didn't realize the police was involved. I just think it's incredibly inappropriate. I'm voting for it, but I just had to say something.
Okay, let's just leave it at that. Okay, if we're all in agreement, it seems like we came to something. And Susan, your protest is noted. So with that, can we call the question on the vote?
Question.
Great. So everyone voting to support the slightly amended resolution, please raise your hand. Okay. Let's get to the end here. Okay, we're gonna stop there. So Bev, what do you see? I see 33 digital.
34.
I'm raising my physical. Blanche, are you still on with us?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so we're just going to take your vote as abstaining now. So that's 34-4. Christian, if you can lower the hands. All those against.
Sorry, I was texting. I'm in favor.
Okay, so can we add another verbal to that? So you can go up one more.
35.
Okay. So anybody against? I'm pausing. Okay, we're going to move on. Okay, I don't know, Kristen, I'm a little confused. Gonna have to ask you, you were voting against this, Kristen? I want to confirm. Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so we have one against. Okay, let's lower those hands, Christian. We know Blanche is one, verbal abstention. Any other abstentions?
Melissa.
So that's two. And let's lower the hands. And anybody for cause. Okay, so Bev, do you want to read that?
35-1 to 2-0.
Wonderful.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
That closes our business. Well, there's two things to do to close it. The one is approval of minutes. I did send an email, just sort of if someone had challenges or we were hoping to address them earlier. So does anybody have any issues with approving the minutes today?
So moved.
By acclamation.
We all in agreement? Great. It's the first time that ever happened for me. So I'm excited. Great. Okay. I'm going to be just brief on a chair report. It's more of just an acknowledgement. We have been a little bit thin over at the district at our office, and we've had Max and Jesse really picking up the slack because our district manager is out on medical leave, and I just wanted to acknowledge the great work they've done. Really appreciate Max is on the call. Jesse's been coming in early, and really it's just been running very, very smoothly. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge them. I always think that's important in life, and I just wanted to call them both out. And Max, hopefully when you speak to Jessie tomorrow, I don't think she's on, you could tell her that we really just wanted to acknowledge the hard work for both of you. It is appreciated.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so let's go into the community session.
Wait. Stephen,
Oh, my apologies. Did you want to, I think you mentioned you wanted to say something, right, Roberta?
Yeah, please. So the Budget and Strategy Committee had a really nice meeting last week, and we will be coming to every committee meeting in February for the first 5 to 10 minutes of each committee to discuss the district needs and the budget priorities. So I will be sending an email to each committee. Various members of the Budget and Strategy Committee will be coming to each committee to explain the process for the 2023-24 budget and also for our district needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move into our community session, and we're going to start with elected officials first. I know Gail is here because she's on my front page, so we're going to have her go first. And if anybody can help me, I'll peruse through. But Gail, welcome, and look forward to your report.
Thank you very much. A few things on the participatory budget, which I know people are interested in. We received 70 projects, just so you know, and 37 of them are going to agencies. That doesn't mean that the rest of them were excellent. Some of them were expense and we're just doing capital. Some of them are already funded, et cetera. So we will be giving you an analysis, and anybody who wants to work with us, we're open to that. So that's just a quick summary. In terms of NYCHA, which is always front and center on my list, I know that there was, it was interesting to me that the general manager, who's new at NYCHA, and you may know this, but I did not, and I was upset that we weren't notified, did do a walking tour of 74 West 92nd Street and a 589 Amsterdam. Now, maybe the leaders knew that, and maybe Polly Spain or others might know, but just so you know, that took place. And if you were not notified, I think you should have been. I want to point that out. I'm going to complain to NYCHA.
Gail, I will say we were notified. I was at the walkthrough with the for one of them, one with Jack. I was at the walkthrough, and the other one because they went there early. But they're
okay. All right, they should have.
We were notified.
All right, they should have let us know.
Thanks.
And I will be protesting. The second thing is that the Brownstones, to their credit, have managed with the leader, Ms. Tibbs, to get the fire alarms and CO2 into the hallways. They're doing it in the Brownstones as a pilot, according to NYCHA. And just want to let you know that that's exciting that the Brownstones have been able to pull that off. We continue to get many, many complaints, particularly regarding Wise Towers, and we will be focusing on those in terms of every aspect of what is of concern to people. Sanitation, we did do a walk through with the department about a week or two ago of 72nd Street in particular, and I have to say that night they cleaned the entire street with brooms. So I think and what I'm going to do is go door to door on that street and others, to the merchants, the business people, and say, can you please understand what the law is, and at least give them the opportunity to be educated. And then I don't want to give out tickets unless we have to. So 72nd Street was a real mess for a whole series of reasons on the gutters. So just so you know, I'm going to work on the education generally, but obviously sanitation continues to be an issue. In terms of also issues on 72nd Street, I don't know if he's still there. I've done everything I can as a gentleman, as we all know, on 72nd on Broadway, right near the bank. And he has been, it's been brought to the attention of the 2-0 precinct because of the loud radio. It has been brought to attention in Department of Homeless Services and Guard of Riverside. My understanding is that he can move soon. I'm not allowed to get into all the specifics apparently, but just so you know, I'm very, very focused on it. And if he's moved, that's great, but I don't think so. In terms of the Dwayne Reed, which I know you might have heard about from the district attorney, I've been in touch with the manager, I've been in touch with people who own Dwayne Reed around the country. And I know that I'm following very carefully what happens with the individual who has not yet been arraigned, is my understanding, but I'm following it very carefully. I also think that as a community, and I will certainly invite you, we should give some kind of an award to the off-duty officer who was very much on the job during that incident. So something that we're focused on. We are continue, although it's not always perfect, with the boat basin, which you're also interested in. And we did get a letter, I think I wrote it as borough president, but it continues to the EDC and parks about the, as you have, concern about the actual boat basin dock master, whatever you want to call it. And so my understanding is they're going to come back today, the PDC, EDC and parks are going to come back to the community. It's not over, it's not done. So we will continue to monitor that as you will. In terms of restaurants, the February 8th, you may have been notified today, there is a hearing at the city council in, I think it's at 10 o'clock, but you'd have to check, to talk about the restaurant issue, which you have made very clear, wonderful comments over time. My guess is it'll be an all-day hearing, who knows, consumer affair and one of the land use subcommittees. And that DOT is going to be put in charge of outdoor spaces. I assume they're going to say, I don't know, I haven't read everything that they're going to propose, but I assume they're going to talk about it must be movable and then enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that Board 7 has lots of comments. And I remember all the boards in Manhattan, to their credit, had great comments, just so you know, February 8th. Same time, I guess, as the LPC hearing. I don't know if it's the same time. I also want to mention about helicopters because it's an ongoing issue. We're going to continue to work with New Jersey, but we still need the federal legislation. I know that we also have called, although this is not tourist related, for the heliport to be moved out of the Hudson River Park. That's not a new issue. None of these issues are new, unfortunately, but I think that it's really time to move that heliport. Everybody in Board 4 agrees. I don't think it impacts Board 7, but those helicopters for not tourists, but transportation to all kinds of very short places. I don't know if Uber has one of their helicopters out of there, but it is very, very noisy. So that's a big issue. I know that I'm a big fan, not everybody is a project renewal, but they did buy the Manhattan neighborhood an M&N building on 57th Street, 59th Street, 537 West 59th Street. And I wish it could be a permanent home. My understanding is if it was a permanent home, it would be for 60 residents, women, and if it's transitional, it's 200. Well, we have a new mayor, and I hope that somebody can understand if it costs more money, then that's what should be done. I'm not for giving up the building. I'm glad that Manhattan Neighborhood Network sold it to Project Renewal, but I wish it could be permanent. And I think that generally nonprofits would like to do permanent housing, but the city is always, always, always pushing transitional. So I'm very active. There are a lot of people in the neighborhood who have contacted me, and I will meet with them. I'm not sure exactly their position, but that is definitely mine. We do have tomorrow night, as I know Helen did, and I had before, a housing clinic at Goddard Riverside. I want to thank them. It's all Zoom. It's all in our newsletter. I hope you get our newsletter. It's on the City Council website, my site, if you need more information. But it's certainly, I think we've gotten a lot of calls today. There are a lot of seniors who are particularly concerned about what's going to happen in the housing world. I continue, we're in the City Council. I'm on the leadership team for the Speaker, Adrian Adams. And we're gonna, I think the committee hearings, as you have heard about the restaurant, they're gonna be starting up. I'm heading up oversight and investigations, and I'm on a lot of committees, including the one that's gonna be looking at the restaurants. Thank you very much, Board 7.
Thank you, Gail. We're going to take, you brought up Cynthia, and I see Cynthia's here, so I'm going to let her speak, and then I'll move over to Brad, who's our second elected official. But let's, you had mentioned Cynthia. So Cynthia, welcome back, and allow you to speak.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, Cynthia.
To piggyback off of our new GM, he shows up unannounced. He literally was knocking at my door with no warning at all. And he came here because, as you know, we had no heat for 2 days in a row. So because I wrote everybody up under the sun at NYCHA about the no heat, he decided to appear. And that's when I got him to agree to put the smoke alarms in as a pilot program. And then Jack wrote a letter, and yeah, Steve did the walkthrough with him. But again, today he showed up unannounced. So this seems to be his MO. He's showing up unannounced. Okay, he's not veto, definitely not veto. He does what he wants when he wants to do it. But I'm glad we got the smoke alarms. If everything goes great in my building, then he said he will be expanding it. There was never an issue with the cost because they don't cost that much that you had to go through this whole rigmarole of getting thousands of dollars. It was simple, the money was there. They were in a warehouse. All they had to do was pull them out. So glad we got it done.
And Cynthia, do you want to, I know, unfortunately, you had a fire. Do you want to just give a brief update on how things worked out? I think we were all concerned.
2 weeks ago, we had a fire in my building. I have a senior that lives underneath me, retired Navy, Korean War vet. He decided to get bleach and wash his walls because he saw some mold rather than put a ticket in. Unfortunately, he used a space heater to try to dry his wall quicker. The heater caught fire to his bed. His fire extinguisher was 15 years old. It did not work. He panicked, grabbed a wet towel, threw it over the heater. It exploded, and a ball of fire shot him into the wall and then started up into my apartment. So because the way the apartments are located, the fire went through my bathroom, trapping me in the bedroom. So by the time fire got to me, I could not get out the bedroom. I wound up with carbon monoxide poisoning. The man underneath me wound up with burns to his hands, his face, his hair. His apartment was badly damaged. NYCHA has been working very closely with me because I said these buildings were built in the 1800s. We go by the fire codes that are pre-war instead of after. Therefore, NYCHA was only required to put smoke detectors and CO detectors in the apartments. Because the stairways are narrow, only one person up and down at a time, and the way they're situated, it gives us more of a warning to have smoke detectors in the actual stairwells, because every second counts when you're trying to get out. And smoke kills faster than fire does. The alarms, the sprinkler systems did not go off because the fire never made it to the hallways. The smoke made it. And it was 11:30 in the morning and I could not see my hand in front of my face. There was that much smoke in my apartment. So I'm glad we got them. Moving forward, we're going to try to get them approved for all the brownstones. There are 35 more to go. But, you know, this is a new GM and he did it, but I'm pretty sure there are, you know, he's not for keeping public housing public. And he's made that very clear. So, you know, it's going to be a pull and tug with him when it comes to getting money and allocated, you know, to NYCHA, because he, along with Mr. Russ, are for the blueprint and for RAD.
Great. Well, thank you, Cynthia. And I know last month there were some concerns about support, but I think that I guess your local community supported you.
Yes, you did. You helped us a lot, but, you know, I get impatient and, you know, the FDNY coordinator was moving just a little too slow for me. So I went straight to the top and got him.
Great. And I think Sandra is on the line as well, who was on a call with us. So we want to thank her from the NYPD. But I'm glad things worked out. Thank you, Cynthia.
Yes.
Great. Okay, let's move on to our state, Brad Hoylman. And Brad, I do want to say that one of our community members did want to see if you could give any thoughts around the redistricting that I think you're voting on tomorrow. If you could have clarity there, that was something that was a request of a state representative.
Yes, the district maps can be found on my community board report by what's called the Legislative Office LATFOR for redistricting. And the process was a rocky one. We had an independent redistricting commission that failed to reach consensus. Sadly, it seems almost by design. And so at that point, it was kicked to the legislature for us to draw the maps. The maps are, I think, pretty clearly more representative of different demographic realities in New York State. But I'm sure you can question different districts, and I'd be interested to know people's feedback as they look at them. It is a very quick turnaround because it's necessary to have the maps approved in time for petitioning, which begins late next month. So that's a very quick turnaround. So my new map, just FYI, hews very closely to the west side. I've lost, sadly, the eastern part of my Senate district, mainly because I had to shed 40,000 souls because we were overpopulated in Manhattan, given that the Republicans drew these maps 10 years ago and crammed a lot of Democratic voters, arguably illegally, unconstitutionally, in certain districts, including ours, which was the second most populated Senate district in the state. So the district, according to these new maps, runs basically from just below Canal Street to 81st Street on the west side, and goes as far as 5th Avenue, actually 4th Avenue on the east side. So check it out. Be interested to know your thoughts. Other updates. I have a bill that I think is of interest to the board, Mr. Chair, that would allow New York City to set its own speed limits, actually lower them to 20 miles per hour in all areas and 5 miles per hour on certain streets. It's been crazy that the speed limit is set by Albany rather than by New York City. This bill called Sammy's Law, named after a young man who died at age 12, just a few months before his 13th birthday, and is in honor of both him and his family, which includes an Upper West Sider, and his mom, Amy Cohen Eckstein. So that bill is moving from the Transportation Committee to the full Senate floor for consideration. I'm excited about that. Hopefully we can get it passed into the governor as quickly as possible. There's a number of other bill updates. We've been very busy on that front. And I have introduced a new bill called the Crash Victims Bill of Rights that sets forward certain standards for those who have suffered at the hands of a crash, and that bill is supported by a number of transportation advocacy organizations. So I hope we can get that passed. Finally, there's a bill that I hope to pass this session that would ban PFAS chemicals and anti-fogging sprays and wipes, which are very common. The chemical is very dangerous. It's called a forever chemical. It basically never leaves your bloodstream or the environment. And there's a new effort across the country to crack down on these chemicals. I've helped lead the way in a number of areas, including banning PFAS in food packaging. It's been used in pizza boxes, for example, and Big Mac containers. And we've also banned it in firefighting foam. And then I would just add finally that if I haven't mentioned it, we passed a remote option extender for community boards. Of course, that's only going to last until mid-February, and then we'll have to either pass a new legislation to allow community boards to continue to operate remotely, or pass my new bill that would enshrine remote access for voluntary organizations like community boards permanently in the state of New York. And then finally, and I mean that finally, we're in the midst of our budget hearings, which if you go to the New York State Senate website, you can watch. Today we had the Commissioner for Environmental Conservation, as well as a number of other environment-related witnesses. We've covered housing. This week we'll be covering human services and mass transit. And it's an opportunity to really watch the legislature at work, really conducting its most important job, which is passing the budget every year by April. That's my report. Tevin Williams, my colleague, is on as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we generally don't take Q&A, but I'm going to let two quick questions if our two board members will be brief. Elizabeth, do you want to ask a brief question?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Hoylman. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you're one of the few elected officials who joined us tonight to talk about the redistricting issue. I would argue that as much as you're doing with all these things that are going on in Albany, which are incredibly laudable, the redistricting issue is something that many of your constituents, current or past or present, have not heard about. Is there any way you can help us make that more public? And in particular, for many of us, we're losing, especially those who live in this neighborhood. This is a neighborhood call tonight for the Upper West Side. We are losing a member of Congress to another district. We are potentially losing a senator and an assembly member. So could you comment on that and how that went through? Thanks.
Sure. I don't know the details about how the lines were drawn, to be very candid. it is a process of, first resort being the Independent Redistricting Commission, which I think was pretty public in its proceedings. Testimony was taken. There were public hearings. The maps were published. They had a press office, but it was flawed because it had a deadlocked vote every time they met. So they could never agree to the maps. And based on the constitutional amendment that we passed, we the voters, at that juncture, the legislature has to pick up the pieces and draw the maps because there's no agreement. You'd almost think, Elizabeth, that this was by design to falter and hand it to the legislature, but actually that's not the case. I actually voted for the Independent Redistricting Commission back in it was one of the first votes I took in the Senate. And I think it was partially due to the fact that both houses have a supermajority, and that was kind of unexpected. And therefore, the process kind of took on a different path. So all to say that this is getting done swiftly. It's coming to a vote tomorrow. And probably there will be challenges. I think the chair of the New York State Republican Party has already suggested he's going to file a legal challenge to the maps. New York courts have tended to view these decisions as political. It's a shame that we don't have a commission that was truly independent like California and can get the job done without political deadlock. That's just the reality.
Thank you. Rich, I'm really going to move on, but if you have a quick question, it would be great because it wasn't planned for on the agenda.
Yeah, Senator Hoylman, you had mentioned virtual meetings, and these are my views, not anyone else's. I'm a huge fan of them. I think they've allowed many more people in the community to join meetings, and I'd love to see them continued or some form of hybrid. One thing I want to address is what we're dealing with tonight, which is chat, where I'm also a big fan of chat. I think it's a great way for the public to be able to communicate with board members and vice versa. My concern had been that board members were basically having a private chat among 50 board members that was not visible to the public real time. I reached out to the Committee on Open Government. They basically said that they feel that chat is not in the spirit of open meetings law, which I think is a misguided opinion. And I think that any new legislation should incorporate that chat is great technology. It can make meetings much more available to the public, but it needs to be available real time.
I think that's a really interesting point. We should clarify that for the Committee on Open Government, which is an amazing resource. I'm glad, they're so responsive. It's the fact that you got an opinion, turned around with every other government agency. It usually takes months, if not a year. But I think you raised an interesting point about how is chat viewed? Is it like a side conversation in a meeting room, or is it's through an official channel? So I would tend to agree with you that it should be public, or not used at all. I will look into that and see if we can get some clarifying language for legislation.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do not see any other elected officials. Mark, Max, Christian, am I wrong in that? Otherwise, we're going to move to both the public and then the representatives.
I don't see. Christian, do you?
No.
Okay. And then Christian, I see one digital hand for the public. How many public people have signed up?
I have 3 for the public session.
Okay, so 3 and then 2 digital. So why don't you call on someone that filled out their information first, and then we'll go back and forth between elected officials, representatives.
So Ian Clark, you are allowed to talk now.
Thank you. So it's been a while. It's great to see everybody at Community Board 7. I'm glad you're all well. Just calling in with a little status report on the skate park at Riverside Park. The pool is complete. So the skate park is technically complete. There's Many people say it's now the best skate park in New York City. It's certainly the most beautiful skate park in New York City, so we're really happy with it. There's limited opening at the moment because of the freezing conditions, so we're all looking forward to warmer weather. The signage is up. The new signage is up. It says Andy Kessler Skate Park, so thank you very much, everybody, for that. It's very moving. It's really great. So I'd just like to thank Community Board 7, especially Parks and Environment Committee, Clary Nort, Mark Diller, Ken Coughlin, Susan Schwartz, and I'm not sure if Gail Brewer is still with us tonight, but she helped with the funding and with the renaming as well. So thanks to Gail. So thank you, everybody. Great to see you all again.
Thank you, Ian. Oh, great. So let's have, I think, April Adams, you're going to give the borough president address today. So I'll have you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Very briefly, I'll just mention that I think since we last spoke, the borough president has announced the COVID czar, that is Aldra Nia, the former deputy borough president under the Gale administration. Next up, just a reminder that we do have our pop-up COVID testing site on 125th Street at our Northern Manhattan office, and that is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And then also, we do have a number of masks and hand sanitizers, so if anyone needs any of that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put that information in the chat. Also, another reminder, please, everyone, all the board members, if it's time for you to reapply, please make sure you do so. I also put the link in the chat. The application is open, so please, if you're interested in joining your local community board, the application is due March 1st. Next up, we do have our February Borough Board meeting coming up. It's going to be February 17th at 8:30, and we will have New York State Health Commissioner Mary Bassett there to discuss the state's budget and COVID response. And then lastly, as I wrap up, I just want to mention that as many of you have probably seen, the borough president has joined with the entire Manhattan City Council delegation in calling for the MTA to quickly begin a pilot installation of platform screen doors in at least one MTA station after the tragic murder of, excuse me, that's my dog, the tragic murder of Michelle Alyssa Go. So that has renewed our sense of urgency for such barriers. And if anyone is interested in a link to that letter, I will be sure to send that to you. And that's all I have. If anyone has any questions, please use the raise hand function. Thank you.
Thanks. Two things, and just so I think everyone who, by now, all the board members that are supposed to apply should have gotten emails. I know I got one today and I'm up as well. So if you think you're up and you haven't, reach out to myself, Max, we'll reach out to April and work with her. And just, there is no chat, so you can't put it in the chat. I recommend that you send it to Max. So, and we're gonna figure something out, but we have no chat functionality till we work through the open meetings law issue that was discussed earlier. Okay, Christian, let's pick a community member.
Zachary Campbell, you can unmute now.
Hi, good evening, Board 7. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. So in light of the fact that it's about 9:30, I'll be extremely brief. The operations on the Gilder Center project are essentially the same as I reported last month. We continue working through shotcrete and waterproofing on the building. You can see some of it has actually been placed on the exterior of the building now. There's a little bit of black coating on there. That will be continuing through the rest of the month. We'll be continuing to average over 100 workers on site each day and approximately 10 trucks, which is where we've been at for quite some time now. The one thing that I wanted to call attention to is that as we begin to enclose some of the floors, there's going to be some weekend work that's happening, non-noisy activities entirely within the enclosed floors and only the enclosed floors. Other than that, I'll leave my email in the Q&A or in another section if anyone has any specific questions that they want to reach out to me on. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Zach. And I would comment that 9:30 is quite early for us if you've been to many of our meetings. So we're actually on the early side. Great. Let's pick an elected official, and we will have Miss Erica Overton.
Hello, everybody. Erica Overton from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. First, the assembly member sent a letter to DSNY. We previously, pre-COVID, we had done a district-wide walkthrough with the chief of cleaning operations at DSNY. People sent us places that they wanted the assembly member and DSNY to visit. Chronically littered spaces, intersections that didn't have garbage cans, et cetera. And so we are doing that again. We've requested a walkthrough and people have sent us some intersections already. We get tons of sanitation complaints. So if you have any places that you really want us to add to the list, let me know. And I'll let you know once we have dates scheduled for that. The assembly member also sent a letter to Commissioner Rodriguez, the new commissioner of New York City Department of Transportation, requesting a similar walkthrough with him so she can introduce him to the district and talk about dangerous intersections that we have A, worked on, or B, also the community has brought to our attention. And so again, anything that you think, even if it's on the list or something you think we may not have, let us know and we will let you know once those walkthroughs are scheduled. Similar to Gail about the boat basin, the assembly member sent a letter to EDC and to Parks after talking to a few community members about a hearing, hopefully having a hearing so that people can talk directly to Parks and make a better design than what is currently being proposed. And so I know a lot of constituents have sent us comments just, randomly, sporadically, and we've sent that to Parks, and Parks said, they are looking at them, but it would be great if there was actually a public hearing. And then just another plug for the assembly members mammogram day that's happening on February 23rd. We have still some spaces. So if you know anyone who needs a free mammogram. And then on the legislative side, the assembly member, and she has this bill with State Senator Brad Hoylman. I don't know if he's still on, but it is microstamping, ammunition microstamping. So it requires that semi-automatic pistols manufactured or delivered to any licensed dealer in the state be capable of microstamping ammunition. And so that's basically just means there is laser technology that would imprint into precise microscopic engravings inside the gun. So if you fire the gun, the shell casing has, I think it's the serial number and the make and model of the gun in question. Right now, that's not, you can tell. So when there's ballistics at a crime scene, you can look and you could say, okay, this might be associated with this handgun, but you need the actual gun to be recovered. So this would be helpful in solving crimes, gun crime in particular. Sorry, Robert, I see you. And so that is, and so, oh, I thought you were giving me a wrap up. Okay. And so that is something that they are working on. She's had the bill. And so hopefully it will be passed this legislative session. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who knew you were so technically oriented? Very
I
impressive.
know, right? I'm a genius, Steve.
Or something you ever did. Okay, great. Let's go to a community member. And I think that you're going to tell me Heather, correct, Christian?
Correct, yeah.
Heather.
Heather, go ahead.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hi, I brought this up at the HHS meeting the other day, but I will bring it up to the whole group. And I guess it's largely a question for Gail Brewer, but I believe she signed off, and I want to thank her for addressing the proposed shelter at 537 West 59th Street. And I'd like to know, will this definitely be a women's shelter, and what population will be served? It's been suggested that 200 MICA residents could be living there, and considering that this is a highly residential area, it's immediately adjacent to a playground in close proximity to many elementary and nursery schools. How is community safety being addressed, and has any sort of community impact report been done to consider this?
I can give some thoughts on this. I can confirm that it is going to serve women. I think other details are I can't confirm others and I think we're early in the process. They announced this quite early because they were buying the building, and that's unusual, but I know that we're going to be looking to engage in the coming months and year. And we'd love for you to join those meetings and we can ask those. But I can confirm it's a women's shelter. I can confirm that there's going to be 200 beds available. Those facts have been offered, and I think they'll stay consistent.
Okay, so there's no possibility, if it's 200 beds, there's no possibility for permanent housing?
That's not my understanding. My understanding is this is a shelter, and that's what it is, and that's what it is. So that's That's my understanding. Things can always change, but that's my understanding.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm going to, let's find another elected official. And Bryce, if you want to go, you're up.
Yes, thanks very much. I don't have a real specific report tonight. I'm not sure how to put contact info in, but to contact Assemblymember Gottfried's office, it's Gottfried R at nyassembly.gov. That's GOTTFRIEDR at nyassembly.gov. Or you can call during business hours 212-807-7900. I will say, for those interested in redistricting, I found a site that is a little easier, I found, to work with, to show what the new districts will look like. That is newyork.redistrictingandyou.org. So you can take a look. There is a big chunk of Board 7 that is being moved into the congressional district that includes much of the east side. So that is one thing of note to Board 7. This is not what Assemblymember Gottfried had submitted in his testimony to the IRC, I think in the hearing at Hunter College or in writing, but it is what it is. Thanks and good night.
Thank you. And again, unfortunately, we don't have a chat, so you cannot share any of that information. But if you want to email Max, I think we're going to try and figure out a way to get all of this information out to the community. We just found this out yesterday, so we haven't been able to address it yet, but we'll do our best.
Sure, will do.
Thank you. Okay, let's, I'm looking, am I thinking Daniel's next, Christian? But you tell me.
Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel, you are the next community member.
Hello, my name is Daniel Gollier, and I'm a Lincoln Square resident. And I just have a quick note. I wanted to introduce myself to the board and say thank you. I know the city's been going through interesting times, to put it lightly, but from my view and the view of many others, it still remains the city that is a goal where people come in quest of something. I moved to New York 3 years ago today, so it's a personal anniversary for me. And I moved here from Boston and grew up on a farm in Indiana. And I can say that moving here was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I'm still very excited to keep building a life here into the future. And I've attended community board meetings and watched a lot of others on YouTube. And they've been an excellent way to learn more about the civic structure of the city and help orient myself, you know, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And I know these meetings, like all public facing government roles, attract notices of things that are going wrong. I mean, partly because that's their job. So it just comes with the territory, but I wanted to say thank you and that you've been a great help to me. So for everyone who has been a part of these meetings, whether you realize it or not, you've done me a great kindness and been of good service. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you. That's all.
Well, Daniel, you are a breath of fresh air. So if you want to show up at the beginning of the next meeting, I'll let you go. No, thank you. It's very nice of you to hear. And it's, we again, with all sincerity, thank you. And happy anniversary. And as a Yankee fan, I won't hold it against you that you're from Boston. We welcome you here as long as you wear a blue hat. But thank you very much, Daniel. Okay, let's move on to another elected official. And I'm going to call on Dana Gallagher.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Dana. I'm from Assemblymember O'Donnell's office and wanted to share that we've held a number of events so far this year. We held a Holocaust Remembrance Day event that we were really pleased to have Senator Schumer join, and then representatives from Memory Productions. And we were really glad to have some good community turnout, and it was a great discussion. We're also, in March, we're going to hold a RAT management event, RAT Academy. So stay up to date. We'll send some more information about that. And now that we're in budget season, Assemblymember O'Donnell is very much looking to ramp up support for the arts. We were really pleased last budget season that we were able to secure one of the biggest increases in arts funding in recent years. So we're hoping to build on that momentum. And yeah, those are the updates for today.
Thank you very much. Christian, do we have any more community members?
We have Alan Romer.
Alan, you are up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity here. I have a quick request
for what I believe is the transportation the transportation committee, if possible. I live at 96 and West End Avenue, and if this is not the appropriate forum, I'll save my question for another venue, if that's okay. But I guess the bottom line is, as many of you know, the corner of 96th and West End Avenue is one of the more dangerous here in the Upper West Side. And it's a simple request that I put through the Community Board 7 the better part of 2 years ago under Mr. Diller's guidance, and he was super helpful in trying to shepherd it through. But the lighting in that intersection fails to light perhaps the most important part, which is the western part of the intersection. And I think it's just a matter of time before someone is taking a left heading or right onto that intersection where they're going to miss a pedestrian. So I'd appreciate it if I could be directed in how best to move that forward, and perhaps addressing the left turn light on West End Avenue as well.
So Alan, we could put you on the Transportation Committee agenda for this month, and you could attend, speak in more detail, and they can have a conversation on how to support you. Max, can you, I guess you're gonna have to read, I don't know, how do you want to do it? Do you want to tell him how to reach out to you, or say your what's the best way to reach out? Again, we don't have the chat functionality.
Sure. Okay. Whatever works best for you. Stating my email over might be difficult because my last name is difficult to spell or hear down, but.
Alan, there is an email on the website. If you go to that, we will look for it tomorrow, and we will work to get you on the community board. I mean, on the Transportation Committee.
Absolutely, and we do check that one every day, multiple times a day. So if you send something there, then it will land on my desk.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking my question and the community board's efforts on behalf of our neighborhood. And I enjoyed the DA's conversation earlier today as well.
Thank you. And as a backup, my email is brownchair@yahoo.com if that doesn't work. But we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll figure out how to give out. And Mark's on. Maybe he has some old notes, but he's quite good about stuff like that. But we'll
Thank you very much.
Great. Let's go to another. Let's continue on with representatives. Hannah, do you want to go?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah with Congressman Jerry Nadler's office. Today, the Congressman led the New York City delegation in a meeting with Mayor Adams. So they discussed the need for COVID recovery in the city, bringing the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, and making sure that all of those funding and projects get implemented in the city. For the project-based grants, some of those are going to open soon. If the Transportation Committee has specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. They also discussed the need to curb the rise in senseless gun violence in the city, the pushing the Biden administration for more funding for more housing assistance in New York. So they, had a really productive conversation today, and hope to see some of those things implemented in the city. Two big things that folks have contacted our office about. So if you tried to order COVID tests through the USPS and you were unable to do so for the fact that your building showed up as a somebody else in the building already put the address in. So there's two ways that we've been encouraging people to try to rectify the problem. I know it's an ongoing problem, and we're working with USPS to fix it. But until then, and I'm going to send this information to Max so that you have it, but you can go, they created a form on their website. So it's emailus.usps.com/s/ and then the postal store inquiry with each word with a dash in between. So that's why I'll send it to Max. But the phone number that you can contact is, I just lost it. Of course, I'm so sorry. Go back to 1 second. I will put that information in the chat as well, to Max as well.
So no chat, unfortunately. You have to give it to Max.
My apologies. I will email it to Max, but there's a hotline that you can call as well. So we're working on that issue, but if you have been able to successfully put in your address, you should be getting your test. People are starting to get their tests. If you have any questions, call the office. That information will be put in an email to Max as well. The other thing is that masks are starting to be distributed. So the Biden administration partnered with various pharmacies and health centers around the country. In New York City, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid they all have masks. I would call ahead just to make sure that they have enough supply, but I believe they started sending it over the weekend. So all of the stores should start having it. But again, you should give them a call. And then just to note about the test, Congressman Nather did sign on to a letter calling for USPS to not only resolve the issue for multi-dwelling buildings or dorms or things like that, but we're also calling to ensure equitable access to the COVID tests, and that the appropriate number of tests get distributed to, especially for multi-family residences or intergenerational residences. So that is something that we are working to do. So mass and tests, feel free to call our office. And then just to echo what Gail said about helicopters, we know it's an issue. We are working on it. There's 2 pieces of federal legislation that the congressman has co-sponsored. So we're trying to push them through. If I have more, God willing, I'll have more information. And so we'll come back to the committee and to the board, and happy to give an update then. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. You've got a lot of energy for this late at night. I'm falling asleep, so thank you.
I try, you have to stay awake somehow.
You're doing a great job. Okay, let's see any elected officials, or let me see, Christian, is there any more public? I'm sorry.
No, we're done with the public.
Okay, so there's a couple people here that I'm not sure. Sandra Sanchez, do you want to just say anything from the fire department perspective? I know that you normally would speak in the public safety session. I hate calling on people late in the call that may be not here, so I'll pause a few. Okay, Max, am I missing anybody, or do you see anybody that I haven't called on that I'm supposed to call on?
As of right now, I don't see anyone else.
And wasn't Damaris Vasquez have her hand up?
I think people.
That just
oh, in the attendees. Yep.
Yeah, she's from State Senator Cordell Clare, if I'm not mistaken.
Got it. Let's
I just promoted.
Great. A team effort. Damaris, thank you very much. Sorry about that. And you are up. Damaris, you are, I believe, have been promoted. I have to look through multiple screens.
Awesome.
There you are. Sorry about that.
Hello, Committee Board 7. Damaris Vasquez with State Senator Cordell Clare here. Not much of a report to provide today. Just wanted to give you guys an update on the committees that State Senator Clare is now on, because the first meeting I was on, this happened obviously after. I just want to let you know that the senator is chair of the Women's Issue Committee. She's also a member of Health, Cities One, Commerce, Economic Development and Small Businesses, Consumer Protection and Disabilities. Aside from that, our office is open to the public. We are taking remote constituent services appointments, and we're also urging a lot of the constituents in the area that are in need of applying for ERAP, even though the portal, funding is pending, to apply to protect them against any type of evictions. Aside from that, we are also, aside from that, we are also working with other electives. I believe there's a housing meeting that we have with Senator in the upcoming days, and I will have more to report for the next meeting. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mark, Christian, Max, anybody else that I'm missing? Are we ready to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, ready to adjourn.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone as always. I always like the last people here. I do always notice who's in the beginning and who's in the end. It's usually the same people. So thank you for being here. Before 10, I think we're moving in the right direction. And I want to thank everyone for their help. And let's adjourn the meeting. Have a great month.
Great. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Third.
No objections.